Opening credits. Don't Tell Daddy. Older Man, Younger Woman Romance. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. About the book. He is my best friend's dad, my dad's friend, and my secret crush. Richard Kane is the perfect guy. Sexy, charming, witty, and a very successful lawyer. Can you blame me for falling for him? Growing up, I never imagined myself ending up with Naomi's dad. I haven't seen him since I went to Harvard Law, but now he's looking sexier than ever and he's asking me out. The problem is, my dad will not be happy. And Naomi? She's going to kill me. Besides, how could a player like him be happy with a virgin? Chapter 1. Angela Walters almost fainted when she stepped into the deluxe apartment. It was like being magically transported into a different world that she had always dreamed of. The apartment felt more like some country estate mansion than an apartment. It was 2 stories high with a huge staircase and more personal space than she had ever dreamed of. Angela was actually fairly used to living in such comfort and luxury, but the difference this time is that it was all hers. She was not living under someone else's roof. She could come and go as she pleased, and she could live her life on her own terms without worrying a damn about what anyone else really thought. At least that was the dream. Growing up the daughter of 2 wealthy fashion magnates, she was expected to act a certain way, dress a certain way, and give up any hopes of individuality. She had resented almost every party, every meet and greet she'd been asked to attend, and really every day living in the house that she grew up in. She loved her parents dearly, but she often felt that they expected her to be more of a trophy than a daughter. Her father, Robert Walters, had started the company when he was in his early 20s. It was called Elixir. It had been a dream of his to build a fashion empire that could rival all of the other top brands out there, and even surpass them. He had succeeded splendidly well, but it had been a hard-fought road. Angela felt at times that she hardly knew her father and mother, since she'd seen them only a few times a week, due to their hectic schedules. Her mother had been one of the models that her father worked closely with during the early days of the company. They'd hit it off almost instantly, and forged a romance that eventually turned into marriage. It sounded like a typical scenario, but her parents' marriage was actually quite strong, compared to most of the people in their social circle, whose marriages were almost shams. She suspected her parents' success in marriage was largely due to the fact that they were both so ambitious, and had a drive and
censored
to achieve. Her mother was far more intelligent and ambitious than the average model. Angela had been told that she'd inherited her mother's looks and her father's business sense, but her parents had always failed to really see it. Her father had always ignored and scoffed at any indication she'd ever given him that she had an interest in modeling. There was something about the glamour and being
censored
that had piqued Angela's interest since she was just a little girl. She had grown up around the industry and attended several fashion shoots from an early age. She did this at first, mostly because it was the only time she really got to spend near her father, but she quickly fell in love with the modeling side of things as well. All the women were so beautiful, and everyone doted on them and loved them for it. They were constantly being showered with gifts and taken to fancy restaurants. Their lives were magical, and Angela wanted to be a part of it. But her parents had never let her pursue the passion. It was very important to them that she attend the best schools and get an impeccable education so that she could use her mind to do whatever she wanted. She used to think that they most likely expected her to help run the company with them. It was damn unlikely that they would ever retire. But as she got older, she realized that her parents did not want anyone touching the company they built, not even their own daughter. That was fine with Angela because she really had very little interest in the business side of things, even though she'd majored in business as an undergrad. Her true passion had always been in modeling, and Angela had never understood why her parents refused to take her seriously when she mentioned it. Her own mother got her start that way, but even she seemed dead set against Angela pursuing that path. Of course, She could have tried to make it in the industry with other companies, or even as a freelancer, but the competition was insane, and the working conditions often less than ideal or even tolerable. That was the gamble that you took when you did not have the step up that she did. Angela knew from an early age that who you knew was often more important than how good you were. That was true in any business, especially the fashion industry. There were a million beautiful model-quality women in the world, but a small handful were able to make a living with modeling, and fewer still were able to become superstars. So Angela bit her
censored
repeatedly and set her sights on a different career path, law school. After graduating with her bachelor's degree in business administration and a minor in accounting near the top of her class, she was promptly accepted into Harvard Law. It was brutally tough, but she found that she excelled in legal thinking and that it came very naturally to her. She'd always had a great mind. Perhaps that was why her parents had always tried to dissuade her from pursuing modeling. They wanted her to do something that would challenge her mentally. Whatever the reason, she found a second dream in law school. And a week ago she graduated from Harvard Law, summa cum laude. She was 8th in her class. It really bummed her out that she was not number 1, and she kept kicking herself, wondering if she'd slacked off 1 or 2 nights over the past 3 years and that made the difference. Oh well, she liked to have fun occasionally, and it was pretty unlikely that this would make much difference to any prospective employers. So, what do you think? Robert the landlord asked. He was an attractive man in his late 40s, who possessed a suave and charismatic quality to him that made him seem younger than the salt and pepper hair and few wrinkles on his face would suggest. It was difficult to tell beneath the expensive suit he was wearing, but she believed that he kept himself in great shape. He had the build of an aging man who still ran 5 miles a day and stayed active and athletic. Too bad this one was married. Flirting with a married man was really not her style at all. Since as far back as she could remember, Angela had always preferred older men. Some of her girlfriends thought it was odd, but she had not really dated anyone who was not at least 10 years older than she was. There was just something about an older man. They were mature and distinguished, they knew what they wanted in life. And the men she liked had a passion for what they did, and they were still hungry. They loved to achieve, and after they achieved a goal, they were setting new goals that they wanted to achieve. That was the type of man that had always lit her fire. And they were usually not just after.
censored
Most of them had played the field, and some had even settled down once and were now divorced. They were more focused on their careers than the notches on their bedposts. This worked out great for Angela, because she had never found a man who she had cared enough about to make love with. It would have shocked her friends to know that she was a 22-year-old virgin. She was not a virgin because she did not have the opportunity, nor was she a virgin because she felt there was something morally or religiously wrong with
censored
outside of marriage. She wanted her first time to be special and amazing, and she didn't want to waste it on someone that she didn't love with all of her heart, and someone who didn't love her just as much. Sure, that was old-fashioned thinking, but it was the way Angela had always felt. She had,
censored
like everyone else, and there had been many times in her life that she considered chucking it down the drain and just getting it on, but she had the presence of mind to know that she would hate herself after.
censored
Was a big deal to her, and losing her V-card was only going to happen once. She didn't want to just squander it on anyone. It's fabulous, Angela exclaimed. She didn't mean to let on that she was so enthusiastic, but she could not help herself. As Richard led her up the stairs, she looked out over the open living area and felt like she was in some sort of a museum. Everything was so huge and opulent, but with a modern flair that was stylish. The decor was fascinating. As she entered the upstairs rooms, each and every one had been decorated in a different style. One bedroom had a Renaissance type of feel, whereas another room had a rustic Old West type of style. It felt like she was entering some sort of time machine with each step she took, and the effect was dizzying and intense. She loved the place. This apartment was the 4th that she had looked at today, and she loved it more than all of the others combined. There had been things she'd liked about the others, but this was by far the keeper. It felt like home, and it was beyond her wildest dreams. Since she was a teenager, she had dreamed about this day. This was the day she claimed her own place in the world and moved away from the clutches of her parents. This was what she had been working towards for so long. Of course, even though she was starting her new job as an associate at the law firm of Keel and Lutz, she would never have been able to afford this place. It was going to take years of dedicated hard work to get to that level. But when she was 12, her grandmother had given her some savings bonds. It was time to cash them in and enjoy her new home. "So, you're an attorney?" Robert asked. "Yes, that's right," Angela said. She didn't feel like going into the specifics of what she did with him. So for now, she would agree that she was just an attorney. "Aren't you a bit young?" Robert asked coyly with a smile. Angela wasn't sure whether to be insulted and jab him back, or just smile and nod. It was possible that he was flirting with her. It was probably part of his gimmick to get people to sign on the dotted line. Or maybe he really was interested in more. Angela had a firm rule against dating involved, and especially married men. But she didn't mind playing along and letting him waste his time. "I'm 22, Angela said. "So, I'm younger than most." "Wow, you must have graduated high school early," Robert said. "Not quite. I was one of a few students enrolled in a post-secondary enrollment option that allowed me to earn college and high school credits at the same time. So basically, when I graduated high school, I already had 2 years of college credits in too." Robert seemed a bit taken aback, but the smile quickly reappeared across his handsome face. "Well, you must be wicked smart then. Beauty and brains, what a catch," Robert said. Angela smiled at him with a glare in her eyes. "Let's keep things solely professional, Mr. Haynes." "Robert, please." "I prefer Mr. Haynes," Angela replied as she walked out of the last room at the end of the hall. It was a perfect lounge room, or possibly a library that could house her massive book collection. Robert hurried to catch up with her as she descended the steps. "So, what do you think about the apartment? It's amazing, right?" Robert asked. Angela glanced around once again and confirmed to herself that it was the right place for her. "I'll take it. Wow, we're going to have so much fun here." Angela had to laugh at the excitement of her closest and oldest friend, Naomi Kane. She had just finished the third tour of the apartment and checking out the moving men who were just finishing up. Naomi was the biggest horndog that Angela knew, and she often felt that part of the reason they had remained friends for so long was because it was so entertaining to watch Naomi shamelessly flirt with every guy who was remotely good-looking. Naomi really had no type, and Angela always had the impression that Naomi hooked up with a lot more guys than she ever told anyone about. "I know, right?" Angela said as Naomi wrapped her arms around her. If there was ever anyone that she knew whose looks she might have been intimidated by, it was Naomi. The girl was almost 5 feet 10 inches tall, and she was possessed with a superhuman metabolism that allowed her to effortlessly keep that waif figure that every model Angela knew starved themselves to obtain. Life was just not fair sometimes. But Angela knew better than anyone that a lot of Naomi's flamboyant party girl lifestyle was to cover up the fact that she carried with her a lot of pain. She never spoke about it much, but ever since her parents divorced when she was 12 and her mother moved to Paris, there was a definite emptiness inside of her. It was like a light had been extinguished, and Angela could see it in her eyes sometimes. Angela's mother had caught Naomi's father, Richard Kane, cheating on her mother with a model. Richard was a highly successful entertainment lawyer. He was responsible for celebrities getting slaps on the wrist for indiscretions and crimes that would have put most people behind bars for several years. The man was smooth as silk and charming as could be. Angela had always had a bit of a thing for him, despite what he did for a living. He was actually her parents' lawyer. He had met them through a few of his supermodel clients, whom he was probably hooking up with regularly, and had decided to offer his services and advice on legal matters for a significant discount. It was unwritten but understood that he would be attending social functions, and be introduced to more and more up-and-coming models by this act of charity. The man was a smooth operator. Naomi loved her dad a lot, but their relationship had been somewhat strained since the divorce. She blamed her father not only for ruining her parents' marriage, but also for the fact that she hardly ever saw her mother. Angela had tried to explain to Naomi that it was not her father's fault that her mother moved to another continent, or that she could never be bothered to even pick up a phone to talk to her daughter. But that was the way it was with kids who desperately sought out a parent's approval, but said parent was just not interested in this case. Naomi practically worshipped her mother, who had been a fairly popular model when she was younger, but could never quite get her figure back after Naomi was born. Angela thought it was horrible that Mrs. Kane blamed her daughter for ruining her career, and this obviously created a lot of insecurities in Naomi. "What's it feel like?" Natalie Young asked, coming out of the kitchen with a banana in her hand. Angela and Natalie had been roommates at Harvard. She was one of the funniest girls that Angela had ever met, but she was so smart it was scary. It was uncanny, actually. If someone had taken Naomi's body and Angela's brains and put them together, it would be Natalie. But Natalie had no interest in modeling, and even refused to believe that she was as pretty as she was. She had dated the same guy for the past 4 years, and it was pretty much a given that they would be married after Joseph finished medical school. "It's indescribable. I mean, I got a taste of life on my own at school, but this is a whole new level. Wow, your folks are so sweet. I don't think my dad would ever trust me enough to get me a place like this," Naomi said. "Mine don't either. I use my bonds to pay for all this," Angela replied. "Oh, that's right. I've thought about doing something like that. I mean, I have the money saved up, but I just don't know if I care enough to spend it all on this," Natalie said. "I would love to do it, but my dad keeps me on too tight of a leash," Naomi said. "Well, if you would take up those modeling offers that have been thrown your way since you were 12, Angela reminded her. "You know I can't do that, and you know why," Naomi said with ice in her voice. Angela liked to tease her friend about the fact that she could have followed her mom's footsteps and become a model any time she wanted to, especially with the connections she had. But Naomi refused to do it because she hated models. Somehow, she blamed modeling on destroying her family. It was understandable that she would feel like that when she was younger, but at 22 she should have had a better head on her shoulders, Angela thought. "What about you, Ange? When are you going to become a supermodel of the world?" Natalie asked. "When my parents wake up and realize that I would love to do it," Angela replied. "They know that you could do it. Don't let them fool you," Natalie said. "They just don't want you to be a model because they feel it would make them look bad somehow." "That's just it. I don't get that reasoning. They love the industry. They've worked tirelessly for years to make their business what it is. Why wouldn't they want me to be a part of it?" "Because models suck. They're all overpaid Barbie dolls who use their looks to make money for no work and then steal rich guys' hearts and wallets," Naomi responded. Natalie and Angela could not hold back the laughter. "Go on, Naomi. Tell us how you really feel," Angela snickered. "Oh, please. You aren't going to sit there and argue with me that I'm wrong," Naomi replied. "You can't say that about all models. That's a gross overgeneralization," Natalie said. "Uh-oh, she's pulling out the money words," Naomi joked. Natalie blushed. She often used a lot of big words without even realizing it. Angela could have sat there and listened to those two banter all day long, but she decided that she would change the subject to something else. "So, what are you guys doing tonight? We hitting some clubs?" Angela asked. "Don't tell me you forgot what today is," Naomi said. "What?" Natalie and Naomi looked at each other. "Her brain must be out of space after all that studying at law school," Natalie said. "Did you forget that tonight is the big party my dad is hosting?" Naomi reminded. Angela practically heard the light bulb flashing off in her head. "Oh, I am so sorry. It's been a hectic week with the apartment and everything," Angela said. "Yeah, It must have been a real drag being around all these sweaty, muscular moving men all week. Well, we all have our crosses to bear, right? Angela retorted. My dad even reminded me of it last night at dinner. Then you have no excuse, Natalie jabbed. Angela shot her a really? Look. Natalie at times had a bit of a sadistic streak, where she loved to remind people of their shortcomings. Angela would not say that Natalie was a narcissist, but occasionally she let that side of her personality slip out a bit. Angela had always just assumed it was because everyone expected her to be so perfect all the time that she often expected the same in others. So you're going, right? Naomi asked. Yeah, of course. Angela was not sure how this had momentarily slipped her mind. Her father had brought it up the night before. It was the first time her parents had actually had to spend with her since she arrived back in town the week before. They were both in good spirits, but they never failed to remind her that it was almost a privilege that they were taking time out of their busy schedules to have dinner with her. Of course, they never said that, but the tone constantly implied it. Richard Kane was having a big party to kick off the summer season, as he always did. It seemed that he had a party for every season and every month, and every time he decided to have a party, really. His parties just kept getting bigger and bigger as he invited more and more celebrities and the mega-rich. The parties were more extravagant now than they had ever been, because his business had grown immensely since Angela and Naomi were kids. Richard had started off as an entertainment lawyer, who became a partner in his firm, and then set out and started his own firm. Angela admired the hard work and dedication that Richard put in, but it had come at a great cost as far as she could see. He and his daughter had a strained relationship, and it had cost him his marriage too. Angela saw this new party as a way for Richard to try to patch things up with his daughter, which he did from time to time. But she figured he had a personal agenda beyond that as well, even though Naomi told her that the party was mostly to celebrate her graduating from college. I bet you're excited, Naomi, Natalie said. I thought I was, but now as the hour looms nearer, I'm starting to feel that it's going to suck the big one. Angela almost choked on the beer she had just sat down with. She didn't hear Naomi curse that much, but when she did, it reminded her of a truck driver. The girl could get a filthy mouth running on her from time to time. And it was always entertaining. Naomi and Natalie, never a dull moment with those two around. Then why are you going? Natalie asked. Well, my dad told me it's basically my party. It would be a joker move if I didn't show up. Okay, so we won't stay long, Natalie suggested. Do I dare leave my own party early? Naomi asked with a wicked grin. Well, if it's lame, then we vacate the premises, Angela added. But if it turns out to be awesome, then we stay and party it up. Besides, the party's early, right? We can hit the town after. Problem solved, Natalie said. Well, ladies. Then I guess I will see you there, Naomi said. Angela shook her head. God only knew what crazy ideas Naomi was working with. After Naomi left, Natalie relaxed a bit. She was always a little on the tense side around Naomi for some reason. Angela had thought about it in depth before, and the only thing that she could come up with was that Natalie was afraid she was going to say the wrong thing or it was going to be taken the wrong way by Naomi. Natalie often said the wrong thing to people without meaning to, and then when people were offended, Angela had to explain to her why that was. So because of that, Natalie was always walking on eggshells around Naomi, ever since she had been introduced to her during Christmas break freshman year of Harvard. Natalie grew up in Long Island, whereas Angela and Naomi were both from Manhattan and went to a different school than Natalie. Angela often found herself wondering what it would have been like to grow up with both of them. They would have had some sweet times. She's going to get so bombed tonight, Natalie said with a naughty smile. She loved to mess with Naomi when she'd had too many. I hope to as well, Angela said. It's been too long. They sat in silence for a few moments, and Angela realized that she was starting to become very excited about the party for one reason: Richard Kane. She had always had a bit of a crush on him, but the past few times she'd seen him, she had caught him giving her a very approving eye. It was borderline creepy, being that she'd known him since she was 12 and he was her best friend's father, but the creepiness factor had begun to wane significantly. Richard Kane was a sexy man. Even with everything that she knew about him and his constant pursuit of new women to conquer, he was so damn sexy. She could not count the times she had thought about him and doing some very naughty things with him. He was the type of man she would love to have her first time with. She knew this was the stupidest idea in the world. He was the exact wrong type of man to let pursue her, but that was part of the appeal. In some ways, he was the epitome of the bad boy, but at the same time, he was so different from the typical bad boy. He was a bad boy who had matured and kept all of the great qualities of being bad, with the good qualities of a nice guy. The two blended together was just the ideal of sexy. But she doubted that anything would ever come from it, except maybe some harmful flirtation. Besides, if Naomi ever knew that she had sexy thoughts about Richard, then she would probably want to claw some eyes out. Naomi hated any woman who ever tried to get designs on her father, but coming from her best friend, she would probably find to be the utmost in betrayal. Was a long friendship like theirs worth something like that? Angela thought not, which is why she had always pretended that the gushy looks Richard had thrown her way the past few years were not noticed. She had done her best to ignore them, but she found him appearing in her thoughts randomly. So tonight was going to be different. It had been a while since they had seen each other, and she wondered if Richard was going to notice her at all, or if he would have his hands full with some big
censored
model. It was going to be an interesting evening. Chapter 2. Richard Kane.
Censored.
His hard member deeper inside the beautiful blonde beneath him. He was almost there. It was going to be an epic orgasm. He had held it back for a while now, not willing to give up the sweet wetness he was engulfed in at that moment. But now he simply could not hold the release back any longer. Ag.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Richard lay there for just a few moments before heading off to the shower. He was already running late this morning, but the waitress he had picked up at the canal bar the night before had been feeling frisky this morning. Apparently, the 3-time marathon lovemaking session from the night before had not been enough to tire her out. She was insatiable and the hottest-looking waitress he'd ever met. But there was no other real chemistry. He was starting to get used to that sort of thing. It had been forever since he had met a woman with whom he could really connect. It had all been physical. He had a few relationships in recent years, but they never seemed to work out. He could always sense the end, long before mutually deciding to abandon the relationship. Richard knew that he got around, and he had slept with more women than he could really keep track of. It was not something he was really proud of, though, despite what other people seemed to think. They all assumed he was just some womanizer, but nothing could be further from the truth. He loved women. He loved everything about them, and that was probably his problem. He was a slave to his physical.
Censored.
And he had always been good with the opposite.
Censored.
They were drawn to him for some reason that even he had never been able to explain. He knew he was good-looking, and he was successful, but even before the success, women had always felt comfortable with him, and he never had trouble making sure he was not alone at night if that was what he wanted. But where he had fallen short was in finding love. He wanted to be in love just like most men did, even if they would never admit it, but other than his ex-wife he had never come close, and if he had to really examine things, he knew he should have realized early on that he and his ex-wife were just not that compatible despite trying hard to make it work. At least they had a beautiful, intelligent daughter together, he thought. The hot water was soothing and reinvigorating. He had a tough day ahead of him, and a good hot shower always did the trick to get him motivated. Usually he would start his day with a jog, but since Kathy decided that she wanted a morning quickie, he had to give that up. In all, he had probably only had about 3 hours of sleep. He thought he was getting used to that, but he was starting to realize that he was actually running thin and getting behind. He finished his hot shower and dried off. When he got downstairs, Kathy was already enjoying the breakfast that had been prepared by his butler Nathan. He had made Richard's favorite: sausage links, bacon, eggs, and a few pancakes. Richard had always started his day with a massive breakfast. This allowed him to work through lunch most days, and sometimes dinner too. That was one of the keys to keeping his physique, that he didn't really share with others. Kathy remained mostly quiet during breakfast. It wasn't because Richard preferred to eat breakfast in silence. He actually loved conversation with his meals, but there was just not much to say. He tried to start several conversations with her, but she just didn't seem like she really had much to contribute. So, Richard just concentrated on eating his food and hurrying to the office. His driver dropped Kathy off at her place, which happened to be on the way, and Richard said that he would call. He wasn't sure why he said that, but he always thought that he might. It was always a possibility, but it was unlikely. Once again, there was a physically compatible relationship that had nothing else to it. It felt like a bit of a curse at times, and he hated it. When he arrived at his office, his secretary went over the reminders of the meetings he had today. It was a crazy busy schedule that would conclude with an appearance in court, and then hopefully he could finish up a few briefs before the party tonight. He hoped that his sweet Naomi would enjoy the party. He had planned it perfectly for her, to show her how much he cared and how proud he was of her accomplishment. He was blown away when his daughter told him she had gotten into Harvard. He himself had only managed to gain acceptance into NYU. His parents were incredibly proud of him, since neither of them had been able to attend college. But his dad had pulled himself up by his bootstraps and started a fairly successful small construction business where Richard had worked every summer until law school. They had always wanted something better for him, and he knew that they were very proud. And now he shared that same pride in his daughter's graduation. She had decided not to go into the legal field as he had, but he never cared what she wanted to do as long as it made her happy. Richard could not have picked a better line of work for himself. He loved the law. There was just something about it that had spoken to him since he was a teenager and had taken a field trip to the courthouse. He knew right then, watching the litigators in action, that he was destined for it. The morning went by with a blur as he attended meeting after meeting. They had several new associates on the floor this week who had just graduated, and they needed a bit of hand-holding and steering as they got their feet wet. He was glad to help out, and there were a few of them who might actually stick it out and make good lawyers, he thought. The rest would realize they had made a terrible mistake and fall back on their undergraduate degrees. Then they would hate themselves for wasting all that time and money on law school. But one had to be happy with what they did all day. "Kane, you want to head to Toth's and have a few beers for lunch?" The head that had popped in the door belonged to Teddy Giles. He was one of the senior lawyers in the firm, and one of Richard's best friends. They had known each other since law school. "I really shouldn't. I got a lot of stuff to do. I have to cut out early for the party tonight," Richard said. "You are going, right?" "Yeah, of course. But you don't have to be such a workaholic. It's your firm, you have to live a bit." "I suppose you're right. My brain is starting to melt looking at these damn briefs anyway." 20 minutes later, Richard was with his friends Teddy and Charlie at Toth's, scarfing down some hot wings and beer. They did this at least once a week. It was a great way to blow off steam and unwind. As much as Richard loved what he did, it was great having these two who were able to talk some sense into him from time to time and drag him away from work before his brain started melting out of his ears. Richard was enough of a workaholic to drive himself insane if someone was not watching out for him. "So, Richard, how did it go with that little hottie from last night?" Teddy asked. "She's a sweet girl," Richard said. "Sweet?" "Yeah, she looked pretty sweet. Oh, I'd give my—" "Hey. Let's have a little bit of respect, you pervert," Richard said. Teddy and Charlie gawked at each other. "Wow, excuse me. When did you get so sensitive?" Teddy asked. "I'm not sensitive. I just don't look at women as anonymous numbers the way you guys do, Richard said. Okay. Is she like the new girlfriend? You like this one? Teddy asked. I do like her, but we just didn't have a lot in common, Richard said, though
Censored.
was great, but that's only part of the puzzle. The other pieces just didn't fit. Okay, we hear you, Charlie said. Richard glanced at them both sarcastically. He doubted either man had any idea what he was talking about. They were both complete horndogs, and they reveled in it. They looked up to Richard because he seemed to be able to take any woman home that he wanted to, and that was true in most cases, but he never saw himself as being like either one of them. They didn't have the respect for women that Richard did. It's rough out there, Teddy said as he chugged the rest of his beer. Richard was not sure if he was kidding or not. With Teddy, it all sounded the same. So, how about you guys? You having any luck in the romance department lately? Richard asked. Yeah, I've met a few girls. But like you, I just haven't found anyone really special yet, Charlie said. Richard knew that Charlie was being straight up. Out of his two friends, Charlie was probably the one that he felt could be most reformed. But Teddy was a Lothario since birth, and it would not be easy to change his ways. Well, keep hanging in there. Maybe you'll meet some great ladies tonight at the party, Richard said. I'll show up, but I might not stay long, Charlie replied. Richard had noticed that Charlie was a bit depressed lately, but he had not really pressed him about it. It was possible that Charlie was just overworking himself. Out of all the people he knew, Charlie was the only person who worked as hard as he did. It was a sickness that they both shared. What's wrong? Teddy asked. Nothing, I just don't feel like partying tonight. You sure? You can talk to us, Richard said. I'll be fine, Mom, Charlie said sarcastically with a grin. Richard smiled back. This was the first genuine smile he had seen on Charlie's face in a while. Good. But I want you to come to the party tonight. Trust me, just give it an hour or so and I know you'll feel better. We gotta do something to get you out of this funk you've been in, Richard said. Charlie relented. Okay, I'll come. Yes. Teddy said, slapping his friend hard on the back. Richard thought for a moment that Charlie was going to choke on his beer. Richard finished his drink and looked over at the waitress to bring him another. As he did so, an amazing beauty caught his eye. She was about 25, with long blonde hair, and the most amazing smile he had ever seen. She was tall with curves for days and large real.
Censored.
Wow, that's a looker, Teddy said. Richard glanced back at his friend, snapping him out of his daze. He forgot sometimes just how observant Teddy really was. It was pretty damn annoying when he thought about it. Yeah, she is, Charlie said. It was amazing how the beauty of a woman could snap a man out of whatever depression he might have found himself in. Charlie was now drooling over his wings, as he was unable to take his eyes off the woman in the corner. You guys are like junior high schoolers. Stop gawking at her before she thinks we're all creeps, Richard said. Well, since you saw her first, I guess you got first dibs, Charlie said. Damn right, I've got first dibs, Richard replied. As he turned back to look at the woman again, he locked eyes with her and smiled as she did. She was now definitely giving him the signal to come over. Richard wasted no time. He waved her over to the bar where the two arrived together. Hi there, I'm Richard, he said, extending his hand. Mariah, the woman replied. Her voice was sexy and sultry, feminine while being very confident and relaxed. Richard sensed a slight purr behind it. She sounded like a news reporter, in a way. It's very nice to meet you, Mariah. What are you drinking? Richard asked. I'll keep it simple, a margarita. Richard ordered 2 margaritas from the attractive bartender. He saw her giving them both a disgusted look. Richard was actually rather used to this. It seemed that there were a million bartenders in the city, and many of them seemed to think that eventually he would come and talk to them. Sometimes he did and sometimes he didn't. At the risk of sounding cheesy, do you come here often? Richard asked. It was one of his favorite openers because it was so cliché. He loved to point out banalities and things that most people accepted and ignored. It was funny to him when things were brought out into the open this way. "I'm actually new to the city," Mariah said. "Really? Whereabouts are you from?" "Oh, all over really. I'm an army brat." "You didn't have any
Censored.
to go into the service yourself?" Richard asked. "No. After spending my childhood being tossed around from place to place, I decided I wanted to just go somewhere that I had always dreamed of and take up roots there for a bit." "So you decided to come to the Big Apple?" "Hey, that is where all the action is," Mariah said. Richard gave her a sexy look, dragging his eyes from her long, slender legs and her tight jeans to the sweet curves of her hips, her large round,
Censored.
that were aching to explode from her bra, and then settling on her beautiful face, surrounded by flowing blonde hair. She took it all in and smiled at him sweetly. "You're right, this is where all the action is," Richard said with a smirk. Mariah laughed and batted her eyes, flattered by the flirtation. Richard loved the game. The banter and the give and take of a new relationship, no matter how short or long it might become. The newness and the freshness of it all was rather intoxicating. It gave him a high like no other. It wasn't even about
Censored.
that, was more of the icing on the cake. He loved the game. That might have been the main reason he had found it so hard to settle down. So far he had not found anyone for whom he wanted to quit playing and declare himself done. "So what do you do, Richard?" Mariah asked. "I'm a lawyer," Richard said. He hardly ever told people more than that unless they pressed. He hated to brag about himself. It was pretty lame for someone who felt that they had to brag about their own achievements, though he had no problem receiving accolades from others when they came. "Well, that's exciting. What type of law do you practice?" Mariah asked. "I'm an entertainment lawyer predominantly, but occasionally other types of cases come my way." "What do you do?" Richard asked, redirecting the conversation. He hated talking about what he did sometimes, mostly because he knew that if he opened up the floodgates and started talking about how amazing his job was and how much he loved it, then it would become weird. "I'm a school teacher," Mariah said. "Oh, really? What grades?" "Junior high." "Well, I tell you, if I'd had a junior high teacher like you, then I never would have let myself pass 8th grade, Richard said. Mariah blushed again. "Oh, I think we could have found some extra credit for you to make sure that you passed," Mariah flirted. "Oh, really? What if I misbehaved? Would you give me detention with you? I don't mind being held after class." Mariah licked her lips and smiled sweetly at him. Yeah. It was on. Chapter 3. Why the hell did I come here tonight? Angela kept asking herself that question. The party was a huge success with a lot of wonderful people there. She saw several celebrities she had not yet met, and several she had met on many occasions. She should have been having the time of her life, but she was bored stiff. It was becoming more apparent to her how much she hated fame and wealth, not because of the nature of those things, but because of what people did with them. The fame would have been cool if it didn't so often change the people that it happened to. From what she saw, established and up-and-coming celebrities acted like different people entirely. It was especially fascinating watching people she had met when they had just started to become well-known and whose notoriety had grown considerably. It was like she had met the same person on 2 different occasions, but they were completely different. It was kind of weird and sad. Her lifelong dream had been to become a supermodel, but she was not sure she would be able to handle the fame part. She would likely start to become very vain and materialistic, qualities that were never really part of her character, despite growing up a little rich girl. She enjoyed comfort, and she had gotten used to many of the perks of being rich, but she could safely say that out of all the people she had grown up with, who were of the rich and wealthy ilk, she would be the one to adjust to being normal if it were ever thrust upon her. Her friends would have complete meltdowns. Angela had been civil, and made conversation with several people she knew. They all asked about her new job and college, and what her plans for the future were. She hated telling the same story to different people. She had already answered all of these questions last Christmas when she came home for break, and she found herself repeating herself again at this party. But she smiled and played along because it was expected of her. Her parents had broken the ice and reintroduced her to several people, which she appreciated, but truthfully she would have rather just hung back and been a wallflower. It was an underrated position to be in. You could observe all and never be a part of anything. The most infuriating thing about situations like these was that her parents often asked the questions about Angela for other people. They asked her questions that they already knew the answers to, just so she could brag about her life and what type of future she might have. Couldn't they even wait for their stuffy friends to ask their own damn questions? Every time it happened, she wanted to pull her hair out, but somehow she made it through okay. "What's up?" The drunken voice of Naomi came rushing through the crowd. Angela glanced to her left to see Naomi and Natalie both completely sloshed and dancing their way through a crowd of minor celebrities who were really popular on some new reality dancing show that Angela had seen once and vowed never to watch again. She had to wonder how famous you could be for being lame. "Hey ladies. Are we enjoying ourselves?" Angela asked. "Hell yes. I've been dancing all night, and so many guys have offered to take me home tonight." "As if. Like I'd just go home with some random weirdo," Naomi said. Angela tried to hold back her laughter. When Naomi was drunk, it was one of the most entertaining things she'd ever seen. Natalie was decently buzzed as well, but even when drunk, Natalie stayed poised and charming, so that most people would never be able to tell. Angela could tell simply because Natalie was in a much better mood than normal. "Why not?" Angela asked. "It would be a great way to
Censored.
off your dad." "I'm actually on great terms with my dad tonight. He has been very attentive to me." Angela looked at Naomi sarcastically. She had hardly seen Richard Kane, but when she did see him, she noticed that he was walking around with some hot blonde in a sexy dress. It was tough to say if it was serious or not, and there was no getting a read from Naomi in her present condition. Angela felt the jealousy welling up inside of her. She hated to feel that way ever, but Richard was one of the few men who could stir up such
Censored.
and feelings in her. "Whatever," Natalie said, her voice much louder than necessary, another sign of how much she'd imbibed tonight. "I have barely seen him," she said, echoing Angela's own thoughts. She found herself wondering if Natalie had ever thought about bedding down with Richard Kane. "It would appear that way, but for my father this is a huge improvement and investment in his time." "Oh my God!" Natalie exclaimed. "Is that Darren Cross over there?" The girls all looked over to the corner. Angela recognized a handsome man about their age dancing and talking with a few beautiful women that she didn't recognize, but they looked too normal weight to be models. "It is," Naomi said. "Wow, he has changed." "I'll say," Angela added. Darren Cross had been the biggest nerd in their school. His father owned a huge chain of beauty salons, and everyone thought that both Darren and his dad were complete dorks. Darren had always been short and scrawny with bad posture and horrid acne that scarred his whole face. But now it seemed he had grown almost 8 inches, filled out, and his skin had completely cleared up. His hair was slicked back in just the right way, and when he smiled his dimples were insane to look at. "When was the last time we saw him?" Naomi asked. "It would have to be about 3 years ago." "That's one hell of a late growth spurt," Angela replied. The 3 girls laughed. "Well, maybe I need to congratulate him on his newfound hotness," Naomi said. Before the other 2 could stop her, she was already dancing her way over there. "That girl is crazy," Natalie said. "What are we going to do with her?" "Not a thing. The question is, what is she going to do with Darren?" Angela said. Natalie grabbed another glass of champagne off the waiter's tray as he walked past. Richard Kane sure knew how to throw one hell of a party. Angela had never been to this house before, but she knew that it was Richard's countryside estate that he used mostly on weekends when he wanted to get away from things. But he had a couple penthouses in the city as well. Angela had always thought it odd that a man would have so many homes in such a centralized location, but she figured that it was part of the charm that Richard possessed. The house was not quite as big as her parents' mansion in the city, but it was bigger than her parents' vacation cottage in Hawaii that they spent a few weeks in periodically throughout the year when they wanted to get away. They did this much less frequently since Angela had moved out and gone to school. Somehow they always tried to make family time for her benefit and push work on the back burner. But now that was basically over. Naomi instantly struck up a conversation with Darren, and even from across the room, Angela could see the look of surprise on his face when Naomi wrapped her arms around him. The two girls he had been talking to glanced at each other and walked away. Darren started to notice, but Naomi sucked him right back in. She had the same sort of charm that her dad did. There was something charismatic in the way she did everything, especially when she decided that she wanted someone's attention. "Wow, that was fast," Natalie said, once again reading her friend's mind. "Yeah. Do you think she's okay?" Angela asked. "Okay about what?" "Well, I dunno. She's been acting a bit strangely since she got back from school. I'm starting to wonder if she has any idea what she really wants to do." "How do you mean?" "Well, she is cut out for modeling, but given the hatred that she has for it, she refuses to really use her strengths, and she went to school to study something that she probably hates and has no intention of working in." "Right. But didn't you do the same thing?" "No, I like what I do. Of course, you know how much I would like to try modeling." "Well, what's stopping you?" "We've all talked about this before. You don't need your parents to become a model. Do you have any idea how tough it is to break through if you don't get supremely lucky or you don't have a strong in?" Angela asked. "I know, but you have to take some risks sometimes. Life is too short to wait around missing the bus." "I'm going to the ladies' room," Natalie said. Angela stood there a few moments, thinking about what Natalie had said. "She's right, you know." The voice startled her, and she spun around instinctively, almost knocking over the person standing right behind her that she was completely unaware of. It was Richard Kane. Angela's breath stopped in her.
Censored.
She forgot how to continue the breath for a moment. Richard was looking amazing. His hair was perfect. His eyes intense and deep blue. His face wore an expression of intrigue and fun, completed with that sexy smile she had dreamed of for so long. "I'm sorry?" Angela asked. It was the only thing she could think of, and she thought she sounded moronic for saying it. She was suddenly aware that her hands were very clammy, and she was starting to sweat. Sometimes in life, you just have to go for it, especially when you have so much talent for the thing you are after. "Thanks. I appreciate that," Angela said with her best smile. Her eyes were independently scanning the room for the sexy blonde that Richard had arrived with. "I mean it. Have you ever expressed to your parents how much a modeling career would mean to you?" "No. They never really gave me the chance. I tried to bring it up a few times, but they always cut me off. It seems that they've always been really against it all." "Well, that certainly seems hypocritical of them. I can't imagine your parents being so thick-headed." Angela could sit and listen to Richard's deep, bassy voice booming out of his muscular.
Censored.
For days. He looked so perfect. "I've always thought so, but I guess they have their reasons." "Well, you know, I have some strong connections. If it's something you're really interested in, then I'm sure we can get you some auditions." Angela couldn't believe what was being said to her. She knew that Richard could have helped her out, and she had considered asking for his assistance before, but for some reason she had just never allowed herself to feel comfortable with it. She wasn't sure why. Naomi had even suggested it to her, but Angela had told her no and to just forget it. What was stopping her? "I'm not sure," she began. "Why not? If it's something you truly want, then you just have to go for it. Don't you think that's the only way?" Richard asked as he sipped his whiskey. She loved to watch him. As he raised the glass to his lips, his eyes remained locked on hers. "I suppose, but I'm not sure I'm really good enough," Angela said. As the words escaped her lips and rolled off her.
Censored.
She realized then that part of her was actually afraid of success. It was silly, but perhaps all of her parents' overwhelming accomplishments had left her feeling just a bit of self-doubt in her own abilities. Well, that is nonsense. You're an amazingly beautiful woman. You have just the right look, especially right now. What do you mean? The girl next door look, that's you. The industry is starting to change to a much more natural look. The Barbie look is on the way out. Fashion designers are making different clothes now, for today's woman. Wow, I wasn't aware it had really changed that much. I see all of the models around, and even the new ones kind of look the same, Angela said. Well, it's slowly changing, and that look won't go completely out of style anytime soon. But trust me when I say that change is on the horizon, and now is the best time to cash in on it. You could be one of the first to usher in the new era, and your face could become synonymous with the word fashion. Angela felt like she was about to faint. Richard was saying the most perfect things. It was all like a fantasy. She wanted to just lie down and wait till the waves of nausea rippled through her. It was nausea mixed with some weird butterflies of excitement. She wanted this so badly. Did he really believe that she had what it took? Or was he just blowing smoke? That's pretty amazing. I would love to go on some auditions. Great. Do you have a portfolio yet? Richard asked. No. I don't. Well, we have to get that set up first. Basically, you need several pictures taken with different outfits and things that can showcase your personality. Despite what people think, being a model isn't just about the looks and the body or fitting the right clothes. There's a lot of personality that comes through to enhance the overall image to make the sexy happen. I'm a bit shocked at how much you know about this, Angela said. She immediately regretted the comment. It sounded a bit snarky, but she had not intended for that at all. She thought about apologizing, but just decided to roll with it. Richard laughed, not missing a beat. Well, I've been around the industry and involved with people from the modeling world long enough to know a thing or two. I see. I guess there's no better way to learn than to get real-life experience. Absolutely. So, where's that woman I saw you with earlier? She is beautiful. Is she a model? Angela asked. No, she's not a model. She's just a friend really, Richard said. Richard, we're all adults here. You don't have to play coy with me, Angela said. She was surprising herself with some of the things that were coming out of her mouth. Richard smiled. Well, we met last night and spent the night together. She was very interesting, and we seemed to be hitting it off. But earlier tonight, I saw a baggie with some cocaine fall out of her pocket. So I asked her to leave. Really? Well, you think you know somebody. Angela teased. Yeah, exactly. I suppose it was a bit premature for me to ask a woman I just met to this party, but I love to fly by the seat of my pants and live in the moment. I know that no one is really perfect and we all have shortcomings, but drugs are something I just won't tolerate. So that means you're dateless tonight then? Angela asked. Yeah, I guess so. Are you dateless as well? You could say that, but I'm perfectly fine with it. Oh yes. I'm fine with it as well, Richard said with his smile increasing. Angela felt the stirring of her loins deep inside of her groin, moving up into her lower belly. The tingling feeling that something amazing could be happening if she didn't mess it up was delightful. In the back of her mind, she wondered if Naomi was watching this, and she was also wondering where Natalie had gone, but she was too wrapped up in it all to focus on anything else. So, I guess I need to hire a photographer to get those pics going, to start putting together my portfolio? Angela said. Yes. I actually know a great one. I'll set it up for you, as well as a video montage. A video montage? Oh yes. It will set you apart from a lot of other young models out there. What does that entail? Well, part of it will be an interview style, and then you'll have video of your photo shoot, so the modeling agency can see how you take direction and how you work to achieve the
censored
product. Wow, I didn't realize there was so much I didn't know. It can seem overwhelming, but don't let it be. Just take one thing at a time, and it will all work out. Angela smiled. She loved the way that Richard broke things down and made everything seem so simple and easily obtainable. That may have been part of the reason behind his own success. She admired that. Richard's eyes glanced over her body, and Angela reveled in the way that he looked at her. It was so nice to be that
censored
and wanted. The
censored
tension in the air was palpable, and she was on the brink of deciding that she just could not hold it back anymore. She had dreamed of this man for a long time and had never let it get past harmless fantasy, but here and now she could not deny that this could be real. And it could be special. But was Richard really the right kind of man for her? She knew him well and knew his reputation. But she had a feeling that there was a lot more to him than others realized. Angela was not the type of person to base her opinion on someone solely on what she had gleaned from others' biases and thoughts. It was probably one of her qualities that got on her parents' nerves the most. They were fiercely independent people, which was where she got it from, but in public they pretended to be part of the flock and went with the flow. She supposed it was best for their business, but it was still silly. It really sent them up the wall when she voiced her opinions and feelings in public that clearly went against the group. "I think we can do that," Angela said. "Do you think you can get away from your newfound corporate masters long enough?" Richard teased. "Oh, I guess you heard about the new job," Angela said. "Yeah. Congratulations. I'm surprised that you never applied to my firm, though. We would have loved to have you." "Well, I'm not sure that entertainment law is my cup of tea. But boring tax law is. My poor dear. The boredom and stress are going to add wrinkles to your face," Richard teased. "I'm sure I'll be fine. Besides, I've always found business and accounting to be interesting. I'm just that much of a nerd." "Oh, you are far too sexy to be a nerd," Richard said. Angela could not control the bright red blush she felt spreading over her face right then. She glanced around as if she thought someone might have heard this, but no one did over the loud music. Somehow she and Richard had found the only corner in the place that didn't have a speaker. "I'd love to discuss this with you further at another time. I'm getting ready to do a toast that I hope everyone will enjoy. So I'll be in touch." Richard gave her a wink as he walked away. Angela could not help but stare at his dashing figure as he moved. There was something so commanding and exciting in even the way that he walked across a room, the way that everyone glanced at him as he moved past and admired his confidence. Angela's eyes wafted down from his broad shoulders to his tight ass. She rolled her
censored
across her lips as she thought about all the naughty things she could do to that sexy ass of his. Maybe if she played her cards right, she might get the opportunity. But that was some way off. Something romantic actually had to happen between them first, and time would tell if things eventually escalated to that point. Was Richard the kind of man who really wanted a long-term relationship? She felt that he thought he did, but his actions from what she knew of him would lead one to believe otherwise. "So what did I miss?" Natalie asked, suddenly appearing beside her with another glass of champagne. Angela's head swiveled towards her, hoping that Natalie had not witnessed her intense concentration on Richard's ass just then. It didn't appear to be so. Natalie was too busy chugging her champagne and trying to act like she wasn't drunk. Angela was not sure she really saw a later evening planned with them. She figured both of her friends would be passed out within the hour. "Nothing really. Naomi's dad is about to make a toast," Angela said. "Ooh, I'm glad I didn't miss that." "You okay?" Angela asked. "Yeah, but as soon as that man starts talking, I'll be even better." Angela could not help but smile. "You got a thing for Richard?" "Who doesn't?" Natalie asked. "He is gorgeous." "You don't think he's a bit old for your type?" "My type is sexy and he is definitely that," Natalie said. "I have to agree," Angela revealed. She was not sure that Natalie would even remember this conversation later. Oh, do you now? It's good to know that you can take your nose out of the books every now and then, Miss Summa cum laude. Yes, I do have a life outside of the books, Angela said. But just be careful talking like that around Naomi. She's liable to stab us with a broken beer bottle. Both girls laughed at the extreme imagery. Angela wasn't sure if Naomi would actually do that, but it was not completely out of the question. Naomi could get very hot-headed at times, and she had been in several fights in her life, although most of those were in junior high. All the same, Angela had seen her pull a girl's hair out during one altercation, but Janie Ackerman had it coming. It was amazing how she still remembered stupid things like that, Angela thought to herself. It might be worth the risk, Natalie said. Besides, she has to grow up sometime. She can't be too protective of her dad. You know about his reputation. He beds down any woman who moves practically. I don't know if that is wholeheartedly true, Angela said. Neither do I, but you can't deny that some of the rumors have to be true. Says who? This industry is filled with nothing but gossip and rumors and lies. Well, have I touched a nerve? You seem to be defending Richard an awful lot here, Natalie said, giving her a look. What if I am? Angela said. She felt weird admitting it out loud, but after it was out, it did have a certain liberating quality to it. Well then, more power to you. As far as I'm concerned, he is fair game, Natalie said. I think I'm already winning. What makes you think that? He just offered to help me get some modeling auditions, and told me how beautiful he thinks I am. He was flirting hardcore with me just before you came back. Natalie turned to face Angela, a look of disbelief and shock on her face. No way, she said. Yes. He's helping me put together a portfolio, and knows a great photographer who's going to help. That is unbelievable. I told you that modeling was in your genes. Well, hold your horses. There are no guarantees here, but things are looking promising. At least with Richard's help, I might get my foot in the door. But the question you have to ask yourself is, what does he want in return? I don't think he necessarily wants anything, and if he does, then he is sorely mistaken. I'm not sure I want there to be a real thing with us. Natalie rolled her eyes. You are such a little girl, you're not a woman. What? Angela said. You know it's true. I have never met someone who's afraid of relationships more than you are. I'm not afraid. I just don't like wasting my time, and I don't want to pursue someone if I don't see the possibility of it being something special. You expect to actually pick out your future husband by knowing someone 5 minutes. Admit it, that is weak, babe. Angela was not sure if she should have been mad or just continued to laugh it off. She knew that Natalie was drunk, and that Natalie was still mostly kidding, and she was making some valid points too. That was probably the thing that was
censored
her off the most. She hated it when other people were right. I just don't have it in me to casually date, Angela said. To me, it just seems like such a hassle. Natalie busted out laughing. It's supposed to be fun. Stop attaching so much meaning to everything. Angela shrugged. She was trying to find a way to deflect the conversation to something completely different, when out of the corner of her eye, she saw Naomi waddling back over to her. Wow. That was Darren. He looks great, and he has a very successful job, but I still can't talk to him. He was trying to talk to me about how many times he's been to Harry Potter World. What the hell? The 3 girls shared a hard laugh. Angela wasn't a bit surprised. She didn't think anyone could change that much. She always remembered that Darren was obsessed with Harry Potter and magic and other childish things. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Angela's attention was instantly drawn back up to the podium that had been set up in one corner of the large living room. Richard was standing up there, waiting for everyone to stop what they were doing. The music had stopped a split second before he began to speak, and the new silence was odd. Angela felt herself being a bit dizzy for a second, but it was over almost as suddenly. I am so honored to have you all here tonight. We come here to celebrate a few things. As always, we are celebrating being alive and enjoying great times with great friends, and we are ushering in what hopes to be another amazing New York summer. Everyone began to hoot and clap. Richard patiently waited until they were done before continuing. But tonight, we are also celebrating the fact that my daughter has just graduated from college. As a father, you always want the best for your kids and you want to see them do well, but at the same time, you learn not to raise the bar to an impossible level and to let your child know that you are proud of them no matter what they do, as long as they do their best. But when your child constantly blows your expectations out of the water, you just have to shake your head in wonder and marvel at how you are so blessed to have such an amazing person call you father. Angela felt herself being moved by the speech as Richard stood there. He spoke slowly and with love and affection entering into his deep, masculine voice. She could hear the kindness and the affection that he had for Naomi. As Angela glanced at Naomi, tears were falling down her face. It was not often that she received words of praise like this from her father, or at least that was the way Naomi felt. Angela often wondered, though, if she purposely shut her father out of her life a bit, because he cheated on her mother, and she blamed him for the divorce. It had been so hard on her, but she had to see that her mother left the country and practically left her daughter's life because she wanted to, not because of the divorce. Her father had tried to do the best he could. So tonight we are gathered to celebrate my daughter's accomplishments, and to wish her the best in her future endeavors as she takes on the world. And I want to wish the same sentiments to all of you who have children in similar positions. I know I'm not the only one. So, everyone have a blast tonight. This drink is on me. Everyone cheered, their voices becoming one loud cacophony of sound that blasted inside of Angela's ears. She was not expecting such a sudden round of applause, but she found herself joining in too. That was one of the best toasts that she had ever heard. She turned to give Naomi a pat on the back, but she was already gone, running towards her father to hug him. As she and her father embraced, Angela found that her feelings for him grew even deeper still. There was so much about him she didn't really know, but she was dying to find out. The man was full of love and affection for his daughter. Maybe Naomi was finally starting to see it. Angela hoped so anyway. It was painful watching her friend exclude her father from her life and reject any gestures he made her way. Maybe one day Naomi would wake up and just come to her senses about it all. Meanwhile, what was she going to do about Richard? Would he actually do the things he said he was going to? Was she going to be getting a call from a photographer? She really hoped so. She had a feeling that her life was about to change. Chapter 4. There we go. That's beautiful. The camera clicked about 6 times as Angela tried to hold the pose. It was not quite as easy as it looked, to keep the same pose several times, and to pretend that her mouth was not hurting like hell from smiling for the past 2 hours straight. But she loved it. It was exhilarating. In fact, she didn't know why it had taken her so long to make this leap. Even if she never became a huge modeling star, just being in front of a photographer's camera was enough for her. There was something so captivating about having someone focus that intensely on you, that sent shivers up and down her spine and goosebumps all over her body. It was the sort of excitement, she supposed, that she should have been feeling about graduating from law school and landing a nice associate's job at a prestigious law firm, but it didn't compare to this. That was one of the things about having a passion and having something that you did because it was safe or expected of you. "Wow, that is great," the photographer Nick Barnes said as he sat his camera down. "You can take 5 while I make a few lighting adjustments." "Great work, Angela." It had only been 3 days since the night of the party, and Angela was already in the photographer's studio working on her portfolio. She'd received the phone call the day before out of the blue from Nick Barnes himself. She had not actually heard of him before, but after the call, when she Googled his name, she was surprised to know that he had done quite a bit of great work. He was an up-and-coming photographer who would probably be working with the top models and top agencies in a few years if he continued to climb. The man had an incredibly good eye and an innate ability to grab the perfect shot. After he had taken the first group of pictures, he'd shown them to Angela to get her opinion, and at first she just could not believe that it was really her. She looked like someone had taken the idea of her and somehow transformed her into something perfect looking. It was the way everything came together: the lights, the wind machine, the background sets, the makeup, the wardrobe, and the hair. It was all so perfect, and it created an impeccable product. For the first time in her life, she realized that she was becoming truly convinced that she could really do this thing. Richard had been right. What a keen eye he had. Nick and his crew, which consisted of Jessica, who did hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and his friend Alan, who did set design, lighting, and wind, went to work on moving things around and changing the background theme. They were working on some office girl type of shots, and Angela was wearing sexy versions of business attire, with her cleavage a bit more amped up and the skirt designed to accentuate her curves in just the right way. She felt a bit weird about it at first, but once the camera started clicking and Nick started giving her direction, she very quickly lowered her guard and got really into it. There was something so freeing about just letting go and allowing yourself to become immersed in being someone else. When she was in front of that camera, she could be whoever she wanted. She had nothing to answer for, and she didn't have to be embarrassed about anything either. It was all about her. That was the thing she liked the most. Her whole life, she hadn't really had the freedom or the opportunity to make something all about her. She was surprised by how much she liked it, and she wondered again why she had waited so long. But every time she asked herself that question, she would always hear an inner voice answering. She had been afraid, because of the stigma her parents attached to modeling and her dream. Somehow, she had internalized the feeling and decided that she was not really good enough to make this happen. But now here she was. And she was good enough. Her pictures were coming out stunning and fabulous. Her phone buzzed right then. She was getting a phone call from an unknown number. She hesitated for a second, wondering if it was some stupid telemarketer trying to get her to buy light bulbs over the phone again, or a boat of some sort perhaps. She usually ignored these calls, but she was feeling good, so she decided that she would answer the phone and maybe even insult this nuisance caller. "Hello? How's the photo shoot going?" the voice said on the other end. She recognized it instantly. It was Richard. "Oh my God. It's so great," Angela said. She was trying to hide the enthusiasm in her voice slightly, so that it didn't make her sound like a complete tool. "That's what I like to hear. The photographer is fantastic, and the pictures are turning out amazing. Yeah, Nick's the best. And I knew that you were meant to do this. Well, I appreciate all of your support, and I don't know how I could ever thank you. Well, how about you meet me when you're done? We can have lunch," Richard said. Angela had to do a double take and replay what he just said in her mind to make sure she wasn't dreaming everything. "I'd love to." "Great. I'll text you the details," Richard said. "See you soon. I don't want you to keep Nick waiting." Before Angela could say anything, the call was disconnected. She looked at the phone as if asking herself if that had really just happened. This day could not possibly get any better. "Okay, Angela, we're ready. Jess will show you the new wardrobe for this set." Angela nodded and followed Jessica to the dressing room. The rest of the photo shoot lasted about another hour. Angela was having so much fun, she never wanted it to end. It was like the culmination of all her dreams and fantasies of playing dress-up that she'd had since she was a little girl. And now she was going out on a date, albeit a lunch date, but still a date, with perhaps the sexiest man she'd ever known. Jessica showed her the wardrobe and left the room. As Angela got dressed, she wondered what Richard would think of her right now. Would he like the outfits she was putting on, and would he like the windows of time when she was not really wearing much of anything? As she stepped back out in front of the camera, Angela realized that she truly felt like a princess right then. She had always wondered what it would really feel like to be famous, or have the spotlight placed on you. And though she was really not famous at all, having her own photo shoot with such an amazing group of people felt pretty close, she thought. And now she was ready to go to the ball. Her prince awaited her. It was perfect. The candles, the basket, the beautiful handcrafted quilted blanket, the bottle of champagne, and even the fancy glasses and the romantic music playing in the background, it was all perfect. Richard had set up everything to resemble something out of a classic romance novel. It was the type of fantasy that every little girl playing with her Barbie doll dreams of, but deep down knows will never really happen, because no guy on earth is willing to be that cheesy. But it's the cheesy things that often pull the heartstrings in just the right way. Angela had received a detailed text from Richard telling her where to go. He had asked her to meet him in the park. It was a small park that she didn't even know existed. It was set back from the road, in a wealthy neighborhood on the Upper West Side. It had taken her almost 40 minutes of weaving through midday traffic to get there, and she was really hoping that something exciting was going on, or she was going to be very disappointed. Then she saw it. The picnic was the sweetest thing she had ever seen. Richard must have hired a crew to set it all up so perfectly, and if she didn't know better, she would have sworn that he had rented out the park for the afternoon, because she saw absolutely no one else there, except for the small orchestra playing beautiful, romantic music about 50 feet away from them. It was 4 men dressed in tuxedos with finely crafted and shiny, freshly polished instruments. It was the kind of group you would find at a 5-star Italian restaurant, but it was all right here. Richard was standing in front of the picnic. He was wearing a pair of designer jeans, a black t-shirt, and a black sport coat. He reminded her of the Hank Moody character from Californication. She was suddenly wishing she had dressed up a bit more, but he had been very vague about what was going on. She had expected maybe a simple walk on a pretty early June day, but this was well beyond her expectations. "Hello, my lady," Richard said as he reached out his hand. His hand was thick and warm. It reminded her of more naughty thoughts that she kept tucked away for rainy days. She had a huge file in her mind of delicious thoughts about Richard that she was coming to realize might turn into reality sooner than she ever thought. "Wow, this is too much," Angela began. The tears stung her eyes as she came closer to the picnic area he had set up. She was not sure why she was suddenly crying, but Richard seemed to understand that she was just overwhelmed by the beauty and the romance of everything. No one had ever done anything this romantic for her before, and it was something she knew that she would never forget. And if things didn't work out with Richard, she doubted it was something that anyone would ever do for her again. Richard bent down and
censored
her hand before pulling her gently closer and wrapping her up in a warm embrace. She thought for a moment that he might try to
censored
her, and her mind went into a panic because she was honestly not sure she would have been able to stop him, but she didn't want that to happen this soon. This was, after all, barely a first date, a lunch date. But of course, Richard had turned it into the most romantic moment of her life, which might have explained why she felt like this was their 10th romantic encounter. Richard smelled sweet as honey. She could not place the arousing scent that he wore as his cologne, but it was dreamy. That was the best word she would have used to describe it, because it instantly made her want to fall asleep in his arms. And if he wanted to have his way with her while she was visiting the Sandman, then that might have been okay with her. Of course, she would never really want that so soon, but the temptation was there. Oh baby, the temptation was there. Richard guided her to her seat on the blanket and sat down across from her. He slowly grabbed the champagne from the bucket of ice and poured both glasses. Angela had never seen someone make pouring a glass of champagne sexy, but Richard pulled it off well. It was almost as if her mind was being clouded and dazzled from all sides by thoughts of
censored
and romance. Was it possible that Richard had found the magic key to open up the floodgates of
censored
and
censored
in her all at once? Years of repression and being a good girl were starting to go out the window. "So the shoot went well?" Richard asked as he began to place the food out of the basket. There was potato salad, cherry pecan fruit salad, falafel sandwiches, and even some bruschetta cheese bread. It all looked so sumptuous. Oh, it went amazing. I never knew that it could feel so good to do that. Well, I'm sure it is an amazing feeling. That's how you know when you've found your purpose in life. When you do something and it feels that good that you want to do it all the time, not for money or fame or because it is expected by others, but because you love doing it and you want to do nothing else with your time. That is when you know what you were made to do. That's beautiful, Angela said. No, those are just words. You are beautiful. You're going to give me a swelled head, Angela said jokingly. Oh, well, I certainly wouldn't want to do that, Richard said, flashing that sweet grin again. So, tell me more about it. When will you have the pictures? Nick said he'll print out a few, and he'll send me some digital copies. Apparently, he has to run them through some software to make them absolutely perfect. But I tell you, the ones he showed me were pretty perfect looking. I had no idea I could look like that. Why? You look amazing, Richard said. There you go, giving me that swelled head again, Angela said. Even as she said it, she heard the Freudian slip. She wondered if Richard picked up on it at all. So, how's the new job going? Richard asked. Oh, the day job? It's going okay, Angela replied. So, you're already thinking of it as just the day job? That is good. That's how you should always feel when you're working on a dream. I didn't even think of it before I said it. I didn't mean it to come out that way, but you're right. I am thinking of it as the day job. It's okay. I enjoy it, but it is far from being a passion. It's more of a job that has some things I enjoy doing, incorporated in it. Well, that is something you can use later on, Richard said. Angela nodded as she tried the bruschetta. It was like a taste bomb going off inside of her mouth. Oh wow. This is so good, Angela said. I know, right? Sad to say I didn't make it, but I know who to talk to, Richard said, laughing. I just realized I don't know that much about you, Angela said. Well, you grew up as my daughter's best friend. I'd like to think you know a bit about me. Well, yeah. I know basics, but I'd love to know what makes you tick. Richard laughed. What makes me tick? Well, I've never really answered that question before. I don't know if it's ever been asked to me that way, but I think I like it. You still haven't answered it, Angela said. I'd say the main thing that makes me tick is the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness? That's a different and very straightforward answer to that question, but very interesting. Would you care to elaborate on that? Angela asked with a fake interviewer's voice. Sure. I believe that one should be happy in life, and that if they aren't truly happy, then they need to re-examine their goals and their priorities to figure out why. I've always done what made me happy. I knew I loved the practice of the law, but I also wanted to be a part of the entertainment world, which I've always been fascinated by. So I became an entertainment lawyer. I knew that I didn't want to work under someone else's thumb, so I worked hard to start a successful firm. I knew that I love women and I love romance. I want to be truly in love so badly I can taste it. So far, it's the only thing that has really eluded me, which is probably why I've spent my whole life searching for it so hard. To a lot of people, that gives them the wrong idea about me. Oh, so you sleep with a lot of beautiful women, just because you're searching for love? Richard smiled at her. Angela was shocked that she had put him on the spot that way, but now she really wanted to get an answer out of him and see where he was going to take this. She had to know straight from his lips.
Censored.
And love are two very different things. I have a strong
Censored.
for women and for
Censored.
won't ever deny that. But when I find the one I'm supposed to be with, then I'll commit myself full-heartedly to that woman and forsake all others. You think you can just stop the chase and the hunt, just like that? Oh yeah. Every man goes through the phase where he loves to hunt and seduce women. But eventually, that life becomes lonely and unfulfilling. If it didn't, then most men would run around forever aimlessly. I surpassed that part of my life many years ago. What about Stephanie? Stephanie is the mother of my child, and I'll always love her for that. But I can't stand the way she's just deserted her. I know Naomi blames me, but I really have tried to reach out to Stephanie, hoping that she'll repair their relationship. But I know how she feels. She has always resented Naomi. How can someone resent their own daughter? Naomi has never admitted it, but I know she realizes that her mother feels that way. Yeah, she doesn't ever talk about that. Her mother is a very sore topic. I knew when she was young that her mother felt the way that she does, and it quickly began to drive a wedge between us. I realized slowly that I had lost respect for Stephanie, and I had lost my love for her. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. I had married too young and impulsively as a young man, and if I hadn't, I wouldn't have that amazing daughter of mine, so I can never say it was a mistake. But I just hope that one day Naomi will bury that anger she has, or direct it to the right place. Right now, I'm just an easy target. Naomi has always idolized her mother, which I guess is typical of children who so desperately want the love of a parent that just refuses to give it. Richard pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his eyes. Angela was finding it hard to take that this big, beautiful man was crying in front of her. He was visibly upset about the strained relationship he had with his daughter. She felt a bit guilty that she had stirred all of that up, just because she wanted to know the truth about who Richard was. If he was faking, then he was the best actor she had ever seen, and she had met many. She felt that his feelings and the words echoing from his sweet lips were true. He had so much love for his daughter, and Angela knew that one day Naomi would realize what a fool she was being and accept the way things were. But no one could push her into it. She had to discover it all on her own time. Richard understood that perfectly, and he was strong enough to wait, despite the obvious pain he felt. "It will all work out okay," Angela said, placing her hand on his. Richard looked up at her and smiled, "Thank you." After the picnic, Richard had another surprise in store. He grabbed Angela by the hand and led her to another part of the park, and to a roadway where a handsome cab with a horse-drawn carriage was waiting. The horse was beautiful and majestic, looking as if it had been waiting its whole life to do this job for them that day. Its mane was stunning, its hair smooth and shining under the midday sun. It was glorious. Angela had not been on one of these in forever. Richard climbed in first, and then held out his hand to help her up. Before she knew it, they were off. The trotting of the horse's hooves on the pavement was a perfect melody of light percussion that had a lulling effect. Angela felt like she could just fall asleep right there with her head on Richard's shoulder, and just drift away for a bit. That would have been the best way to end this day. Richard snuggled up a bit closer to her to encourage her comfortable leanings, his arm wrapped around her, pulling her close to him. His body was hard but warm with an inviting softness to it. When you were with a big, strong, generous man like this, it was so easy to let go of any worry or problem that you had with the world. Everything was just perfect when it was this way. "This is so sweet," Angela said. "I haven't been on one of these since I was a kid. It's been a while for me too." It's funny how such a simple thing like this can often be the most romantic. "I agree," Angela said. After a few moments, she had to ask Richard a question that was burning in her mind. "It's been a while since I've had a lunch this romantic." "I'm sorry?" Richard asked. He was obviously taken aback. "Well, you are the Richard Kane. And you have known me since I was a girl. I have to admit, I've had a bit of a crush on you for a while. When did you realize that I was someone you would want to take out?" Richard laughed. "Well, I've seen you grow from a young girl into the strong, independent young woman you are today. And sometime over the past few years, as I realized that you're now that woman, something just clicked in me. I guess I felt drawn to you somehow. I'm not sure that answers your question, but it's how I feel." "You don't think I'm too old, do you?" Richard asked with a laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh, but a laughter that let her know that he was more than comfortable with his age, and that the age difference between them didn't mean a thing to a man like Richard Kane. "No, not at all." "Good," Richard said as he held her even closer. "So tell me a bit about some of your exotic travels," Angela said. Wow, that is random, Richard joked. That's me. Random ideas pop into my head quite often, Angela replied. Well, good. That's the sort of thing I need to keep me on my toes, Richard said as he let out a long sigh trying to gather his thoughts. I'd say the most interesting trip I ever took was to Costa Rica. Oh, I've always wanted to go there. It's beautiful, lush jungles and plant life, interesting people and amazing food. But it's so beautiful that it can also be deadly. How so? Well, when I went there about 8 years ago, I went with a friend of mine who's a bit of an adventurist. He loves to go to exotic locales and live off the land, hike through all sorts of crazy landscapes. So 6 of us decided to go on a 3-day hike through the jungle. We came face to face with a panther at one point, and I was actually almost bitten by a fer de lance, one of the most venomous snakes in the world. Oh my God. I would have died. I can't stand snakes. Snakes are nothing to fear as long as you show them a healthy respect. They're actually beautiful creatures who serve a vital function in the world. I guess I never thought of it that way, but just thinking of them gives me the creeps. That's just because you know that a small percentage of them are venomous, but most are not. There's something about a snake that's very primal. I take it you've never held a snake in your hand? Oh no. The few snakes I've seen have sent me running away in terror, Angela replied nervously. She was uncomfortable just thinking about the snakes, and she hated that he could probably hear the nerves in her voice. He probably thought she was some lame, girly girl, while he was some swashbuckling adventurer. Stay cool, Ange. Just stay cool. Well, it's amazing. To hold a big, long snake in your hand and feel it moving and sliding in and out of your fingers. It's a gift to be able to tame one of them. The secret is to let it move loosely, don't try to squeeze it. Just let it move freely and feel its warmth bonding with your hand. Angela swallowed hard. She was suddenly not thinking about snakes. The way he was describing handling of the snake was putting disturbing thoughts in her head. She would have loved to grab his snake right then. She could picture it now, a big, thick, throbbing tool in her hand, her fingers kneading it just right and getting it perfectly primed. She shook her head trying to clear her thoughts, but Richard was still going. Beads of sweat were trickling down her forehead, and she casually tried to wipe them away. You have to be careful with the head, that's the dangerous part. But as long as you're touching the snake just right, it won't feel threatened and it won't bite. You just have to respect it. Right. So how did you come to almost get bitten? Angela asked. She was thoroughly intrigued by the story, wondering how many different adventures Richard had been on, and if she would ever have the opportunity to go through anything like that with him. As she thought this, she realized that she was already seeing a future with him. Was this too soon to feel like that? She certainly didn't want to reveal her cards and show her true feelings to him just yet. It was fun to keep a bit of mystery alive, especially this early in the game. Well, we were walking through a clearing down towards a lake, and I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I looked down, and I had to squint really hard to make it out. You would not believe the excellent camouflage this snake had. The way it just disappeared into the surroundings was incredible, but I saw it move slightly. It was about a foot long and very thick. Our guide told us to move away, and told us what the snake was. They didn't kill it? Of course not. It was just minding its own business, and hoping that it didn't have to waste its most valuable weapon on some person who was being careless. So we walked on the other side of the path, and tried not to disturb it. Wow, I would have screamed like a little girl, Angela said. Oh, I doubt it. I have a feeling you are much stronger than you give yourself credit for. Angela smiled and looked up at him. Her eyes were suddenly locked on his, captivated by his gaze. He was so looked stunning, and the moment was perhaps the most romantic she had ever felt. It was as if they were all alone in the world right then. Richard reached down and cupped her cheek with his left hand, and pulled her face up slightly towards him. His lips were brushing against hers now, sweetly and so softly, that it felt like just a warm breath brushing against her. Wow, Angela said as their lips parted. I'll second that, Richard said, rubbing her arms in an embrace. Angela felt her whole body practically tingling. That had never happened to her before from one.
Censored.
She thought about all of the times she had dreamed of doing that. It blew her expectations away. Most things that one fantasizes about never quite live up to the fantasy if you are able to actually do it for real, but Angela didn't feel that way about what had just happened. It was 10 times better than she ever thought it could be. There was more than a physical feeling behind the
Censored.
It was tough to describe, but there was a need there. There was a strong urge to repeat the act over and over again. It was more than a
Censored.
It was as strong and primal as the urge to eat any food put in front of you, if you were lost in the desert for 3 days. Richard held her face close to his gingerly, enjoying the warmth and the embrace. His face was rugged, even more so than it looked. Angela did not expect the stubble to be so thick and coarse, since Richard was always very clean-shaven. She found the rough texture somehow appealing. It was animalistic and primal, masculine and sexy.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Here we are. The voice from up front suddenly broke through the beautiful romantic world they had just found themselves in. Angela froze with panic. Was the driver getting down and coming back there? Oh God. She quickly moved Richard's hand away and pulled her shirt down. She grabbed her bra, which was now mostly in her lap, and quickly stuffed it down her pants just a mere second before the driver opened the door and greeted them both with a friendly smile. Are we all done or do you want another round? The driver asked. Angela's mind snapped back to reality. She looked down. Her bra was still on, her shirt was not disheveled, and Richard was not feeling her up. She looked down at her skirt in a state of total panic, still trying to make sense of what had just happened. Her skirt was fine, it had not been touched. It was all a dream. Just an
Censored.
wet, crazy dream. Richard looked at her, unaware of the vivid fantasy she had just had. Want another round? Richard asked. No, I have to go, Angela said abruptly. She tried not to jump out of the cab, but she was out of there much faster than she anticipated, almost twisting her ankle on the step. Her first instinct was to run away, but she caught herself realizing how rude that would have been. A replay of the past few minutes kept rolling through her head in a loop. What had she almost done? If the driver had not stopped right then, what would have happened? Angela knew the answer to that question, and it terrified her deeply. She would have gone all the way. She was not in any position to stop. She had never come close to experiencing passion or pure animal
Censored.
on that level in her life. It was like something you would see in those late movies on Cinemax that you had to laugh at because no one enjoyed
Censored.
that much. Relax, it was just a dream. It wasn't real. But she had just been there. She could still feel the moistness between her legs, it was almost dripping. She wanted to pick up where they left off and continue so badly. An image of Richard taking her behind the tree she was passing right then flashed in her mind. She could just drop her panties and lift up her skirt to allow him easy access and let him do whatever he wanted to her. She would just lie there and enjoy the pure ecstasy. What the hell was wrong with her? She had never felt this obsessed with
Censored.
before. But she realized it wasn't.
Censored.
It was Richard. She was becoming almost obsessed with her.
Censored.
To be with him. He probably thought she was insane, the way she had just bolted out of that beautiful handsome cab. Richard looked at her, as he finished paying the driver in what looked like a wad of hundreds. He was apparently a generous tipper. He jogged towards her with a sweet smile on his face. The smile was easygoing and natural, which put her at ease. Maybe he didn't think she was crazy. Maybe he still wanted to see her again. But how far would they go next time? That was an exciting but worrisome thought. How far? Are you okay? Richard asked. My stories aren't that boring, are they? Angela smiled as naturally as she could. Oh no. I was really enjoying hearing about it all. I just have an early day tomorrow, but we can still talk while you walk me back to my car? So you saw some panthers, you were saying? Angela asked with a laugh. Richard chuckled as well at her lame attempt to keep
censored
tension at bay. Yes, we did. One night when we were camping, I awoke to a low growling noise not far from my camp. The guide was also instantly awakened. I wasn't really frightened until I realized he was. I didn't seriously think that a panther would attack a group of us sitting around a large fire, but apparently the guide said it does happen. He grabbed the rifle just in case and began to make a lot of noise. Soon the rest of us were up and making the same noise. The panther had been close because I could see it moving from the glow of the fire in the dark. It was pretty miraculous, actually. I would have been terrified, Angela said. I was, Richard replied with a laugh. Wow, I'm surprised to hear a big strong man like yourself not afraid to admit that he was afraid once. Why not? I'm way past the age of being macho, Angela. Everyone feels fear, it's a routine primal emotion. But most people just don't know how to deal with it and use it for the fuel to achieve the right outcome. That's one thing I've learned in all my years. That is incredibly insightful. I never really looked at it that way. Most people don't, which is what keeps them timid and keeps them from achieving what they want. You have to use the fear as a catalyst for change. You have to assign a new meaning to that feeling. It's a negative feeling if you focus on the fact that it's uncomfortable. It's really a great feeling because true change comes from discomfort and the
censored
to avoid more discomfort. Most people just back away from the situation and fail to grow. You have to take it by the horns and charge forward. Angela looked at him, trying to decide if he was for real. He sounded a bit like a Tony Robbins seminar, but she knew that he really believed this and that he lived his life this way. He may have been one of the most courageous men she had ever met. The rest of the walk back to her car was peppered with more sweet conversation, some lighthearted and some a bit deeper. She was finding out so much about this man who had intrigued her for so long, when she thought he was just her best friend's dad. There was a whole other world behind the making of Richard Kane that she had never dreamed possible, and she was finding herself completely wrapped up in it all. When they reached her car, she thanked him for a wonderful afternoon. Well, the evening doesn't have to end now. My apartment isn't far from here. Would you like to join me for some drinks? Richard asked. Angela wanted to. Boy, did she want to. But she knew that she shouldn't. She had the sinking feeling that she might be on the road to becoming just another conquest, or someone that Richard would never allow himself to take seriously. Besides, after what had just happened, she didn't trust herself enough to put the brakes on if things started to get physical. The man was just so magnetic, and she could feel herself falling for him. But there were too many things that were still unknown. Could she fall in love with him? Yes, definitely. Could he feel the same about her? That was the question without a definite answer, and that was the reason she had to decline the offer. I'm sorry, but I do have an early day tomorrow. I really need to be getting home. I still have some work to do since I took some time off today for the photo shoot. Richard flinched for a second before smiling that warm smile of his. Angela could see the wheels of confusion turning in his mind. She knew that she was giving him all sorts of mixed signals, and she really didn't want him to get the wrong idea about her. Oh, if she could have just told him how she felt and what she was afraid of. She urged her mouth to move and to explain herself, but she couldn't. She just stood there feeling silly while Richard tried to make sense of it all. But his confusion was so brief that she almost wasn't sure it existed. It was just a slight flinch and a small glint in the eye, and then it was gone. I completely understand. I can't wait to see those pictures. Please send me some copies when you get them. I will, Angela said. Richard
censored
her again sweetly and said good night. Angela drove home with her head in the clouds. Was this really happening? Chapter 5. Richard let the cue stick slide between his fingers hard and crash into the rack of balls, propelling them to scatter all over the table. His eyes furiously watched as several of them began to sink into the side pockets, and one in the corner. It was a good break, and he was proud of it. Too bad he was playing a game by himself. He sank more stripes than solids, so he played the stripes first. He had first picked up the game of pool when he was a teenager. His grandfather had a nice table in his basement, and any time he could get a chance, he was down there with the stereo blasting out great rock music and working on his billiards game. There was something very solitary about the game, even when you played it with people. You could play as teams, but even then it was really a man-against-man type of sport. When you had the stick in your hands, it felt like it was you against the balls. He had even played in a few tournaments when he was younger, but he had been completely shut out. That was a sobering fact as to how good he really thought he was. He had beaten all of his friends and family routinely, and as far as he could tell, he was pretty good at the game. He had even become a force to be reckoned with in the pool halls in the local neighborhoods, but when he tried to go national, it just fell apart. He barely made it past the qualifying rounds of the tournament before he was shut out. The way these guys played, as if they had all of the geometry of the game worked out in their heads and they knew exactly how to do it all scientifically, was a huge disadvantage to him. If he had wanted to, he was sure he could have improved, and in a few years he might have been a strong qualifier for a tournament like that, but when he really studied himself, he didn't see pool being his main occupation. By that time the legal field had called to him and he had pursued that instead. He never looked back. But he still loved the game. He sank 3 of the easier shots, and then sat the stick down to pour another glass of whiskey. It was the way he liked to unwind at the end of the day. A solitary game of pool and a few drinks. Then he would shower and go to bed, if he was alone. That was the thing though. Did he want to be alone tonight? Angela had declined his offer to come back to his apartment, which had thrown him a bit. There was something very special about that girl, even more so than he had initially felt when he realized that the strong attraction he had for her. He had been noticing her for a while. It was a strange realization, and she had even touched on it during their earlier conversation at the picnic in the park. He had not been totally straight with her, since he felt a bit caught off guard by the question. The girl was so smart and bold. That was the thing that stuck out most about her to him, and the thing he found most attractive. She had a lot of guts, and she didn't hide a bit of who she was and what she was thinking. He remembered about a year and a half before, at one of the parties he had attended, as being the point at which he noticed his daughter's best friend, whom he had seen grow up in a whole different light. Angela's parents had thrown the party to announce the launch of their first fragrance they were marketing, and it had been a huge event. Angela had shown up with Naomi, fashionably late as always, and the girls were obviously ready to have fun beyond fun. His eyes had landed on this vision of beauty standing beside his daughter, and at first, he thought it was one of the new models that the Walters had just started working with to market the fragrance, but after doing a double take, he realized that it was Angela. She was stunning and graceful. He had not really been able to stop thinking about her the rest of the evening. The situation seemed strange to him, and somehow he didn't feel it was right to make his attraction known to her that night. This was something that had to be done slowly and delicately given the situation. He was fine to wait, he was patient. But every time he had seen Angela since then, she just became more and more alluring. It had been a long time since a woman had captivated his imagination this way. Of course, he had to consider the fallout of pursuing a romance with this particular woman. The Walters were his closest friends. Naomi was Angela's best friend. None of them would have been particularly happy to hear about this romance popping up. But he wasn't sure he really cared anymore. Angela was her own woman. She was going to be a brilliant attorney, unless she focused her attention on modeling. There was something so special about her, as a model. His friend Nick Barnes had texted him to say what a brilliant find Angela was. The camera loved her, and everyone who would see these pictures would say the same thing. If those pictures landed in front of the right eyes, then her life was going to change. He kept thinking about that first.
Censored.
With Angela today. The fiery passion that had welled up within him was almost impossible to control. He wanted to just take her and rip her clothes off right then and there, and take her in the back of the cab. It had taken every ounce of restraint that he possessed to keep himself together. Those feelings of
censored,
had not abated in the several hours since then. He had tried several things to take his mind off it, but he could not stop thinking about her. He wanted to hold her, touch her, and just be with her. But he knew that he had to take it slow. It was up to her to dictate the pace. From what he could tell, Angela didn't strike him as the type of woman who was very experienced in the ways of love. There was just a vibe that she put off that said she was focused and determined on other things in the world, and that her love was going to be tough to earn, but it was going to be so valuable and special to the man who did obtain it. He hoped to be that man. He really did. As Richard finished running the table and sank the last 2 balls, his gaze landed on his phone. His thoughts were dwelling on a few of the recent women he had been mildly involved with. He wondered if any of them would be interested in some romantic fun tonight. He grabbed the phone and began to scroll through his contacts. When he arrived at Melanie's number, his thumb paused over it. He was ready to push the button, but Angela's face popped into his head just then. He wasn't going to be able to get her out of his mind. What kind of fun would he have with Melanie if his mind and his heart were stuck on Angela? He sat the phone down and sipped his drink. It had been a long time since he had felt so strongly about a woman. There was something about her that he just could not get out of his mind, and he knew that if he made love to another woman tonight, he would feel empty and guilty inside. He wasn't sure he would be able to see Angela again without telling her about it, even though they'd had one date and had made no real commitments to each other. What was going on? Why did he feel this way? He couldn't make heads or tails out of it, but he was enjoying the feeling. He could not wait to see Angela again and wrap his arms around her. The way she felt against his own body was the way he had always imagined it should feel. It was beyond
censored.
There was something real and concrete there. They had established a connection, and he wanted to honor it. Richard knew that if he spent the night with another woman, then he would feel like he was cheating on Angela, and he was not sure he wanted to subject himself to that pain. He knew what he had to do. Richard finished his drink and stepped into a hot shower, allowing his body to adjust to the warm water. It felt so good, rolling down his stomach and onto his raging hardness. He wanted Angela so badly. Her sweet face was all that he was able to think about as he pleasured himself. After the shower, he lay down and slept like a baby. He hoped he was able to see Angela tomorrow. Chapter 6. Angela swung the racket as hard as she could with the backhand swing. She connected with the tennis ball strongly, sending the ball sailing over the net. It landed just before going out of bounds and grabbing the point. Rachel Williams finished rolling into the fence. She had dove for the ball, giving a valiant effort, but it was just outside of her reach. Angela had hit the ball too hard. It was like a rocket, and she felt lucky it had landed in bounds. Yes, Naomi shouted, rushing over and slapping Angela a high five. Way to go.
Censored.
Angela was not sure whether she should feel insulted, but Naomi's riotous laughter was rather infectious as she wrapped her arms around her and practically lifted her off the court. She, Naomi, Rachel, and Natalie had decided to spend the Saturday playing doubles on the tennis court. It was something Angela and Naomi had been doing since high school together, and later on they brought the other 2 girls on board as well. Playing doubles was always more fun than playing singles anyway. You got lucky on that one, Natalie said. Luck? There is no luck with team victory, Naomi yelled. Angela looked around a little embarrassed. Naomi was the only girl she knew who would yell and scream at a sporting event as much as a drunk frat boy. Oh, come on. You barely beat us, Rachel said, walking to the net and rubbing her elbow the whole way. You okay? Angela asked. Yeah, I think I'll live. I should have known I couldn't get that one, Rachel said. You forget that you're not Anna Kournikova? Natalie teased. No, I'm way hotter. And I've actually won before, Rachel joked. The group joined her laughter. Rachel was one of the funniest girls they hung out with, but she was not around that much since her family moved upstate several years before. Her dad was a software developer who had sold a huge piece of software to Microsoft for $300 million a few years ago. After that, they moved to the Hamptons, and the other girls had not really seen Rachel very often. She was hilarious and way more athletic than the rest of them, but Angela had a few good moments on the tennis court that she loved to savor. This was definitely one of them. "Great shot." The voice came from behind them. Angela thought the voice sounded very familiar, but she never dreamed who would be standing there when she turned around. It was Richard. He was with another man that Angela didn't recognize. They were both dressed in typical polo shirts and dressy athletic shorts, typical tennis attire for the wealthy elite. Richard looked immaculate as always. The way the sun glistened off his tanned face, and the way his clothes clung to his muscular, toned frame was enough to make a woman drool, and Angela had to fight her urge to do just that. For a second she forgot that Naomi was standing right beside her. "Thanks," Angela said, remembering that Richard had remarked about the shot that she made. "Fancy seeing you lovely ladies here. Naomi, I thought you were going shopping today." "Well, my friends decided we would do this instead. Is that okay with you?" Naomi responded condescendingly. Richard smiled and laughed it off as both Natalie and Rachel glared at her. They knew that she had a strained relationship with her father, but it was still tiresome to listen to. All anyone ever saw was a sexy, sweet man who loved his daughter. But his love seemed lost on Naomi. "I don't believe you've met my good friend Teddy Giles," Richard said, introducing the handsome stranger. Teddy smiled good-naturedly. Angela noticed that while he might have been good-looking, Teddy instantly put out a vibe of someone she would never fully trust. She wasn't sure what it was exactly, but some people just seemed smarmy. "Teddy, this is my daughter Naomi and her friends Angela, Natalie, and Rachel." "Great to see you again, Rachel." Teddy nodded a hello to each one. "We actually met at the party," Natalie said with a slight roll to her eyes. Angela could infer from her expression that she had not enjoyed the first time around with Teddy. "Oh, that's right," Teddy said. Angela could tell he didn't remember her at all. "Well, it's good to see that your tennis game has not faded at all, my dear," Richard said to Naomi. "Several of us played at school whenever we could," Naomi responded in her deadpan way. Richard had paid for Naomi to have private instruction since she was 6 years old, until she went away to college. Angela wondered how much Richard hated to see that his daughter was barely an average player, after all of the lessons and work she had put into the game over the years. She truly loved to play, but she had been born with the coordination of someone who couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. Angela, on the other hand, had never really had any formal instruction. She loved the game, but it had always come fairly easily to her. Although she considered herself to be better than average, she was in no way an amazing player. Still, she could hold her own on the court with just about anyone she had ever played with. "We've got to get going," Natalie said as she and Rachel began to walk away. "Bye, girls," Angela said. They both had family functions they were expected to attend, or so they said. Natalie and Rachel were both somewhat secretive about what they did outside of this friendship group, but it seemed that they always had something else going on that prohibited them from really being a part of things. "Well, sad to see those two go," Teddy said as his eyes watched Rachel and Natalie walking away. He was really taking in the view, which only added to his smarmy demeanor. "I hope you girls aren't done for the day. Teddy and I are just getting warmed up." "Doubles?" Richard said. "That sounds good to me," Angela replied. She hoped the enthusiasm in her voice wasn't too obvious. "Okay, but I want to be on Teddy's team," Naomi said as she walked to her place on the court. "Fair enough. Besides, too much of our family awesomeness on one team wouldn't be fair to anyone else competing against us," Richard joked. "Dream on, old man," Teddy replied as he stepped around the net and jogged over to join Naomi. "I'm still young enough to take you down," Richard shot back as he and Angela took their places. When they were out of earshot of the other two, Richard spoke to Angela. "It's great to see you again," he said. "Likewise," Angela replied in a neutral voice that took an iron will to produce and keep steady. I tried to get in touch with you the other day, but I guess you were busy, Richard said. Oh yeah. It's been a crazy week, Angela said. Richard had phoned her twice and left voicemail messages both times. She almost called him back, but she was really busy with work, and she was also busy playing a little bit hard to get. Angela had never really been the type to play games, but something told her that this time she needed to remain a bit aloof. She trusted Richard and what he had told her about himself, and that he was not quite the man most people thought he was, but still, words and actions were not the same things. So Angela decided to just play this one by ear, and let things work out as they may. She was not in any rush, even though she had thought about him and his sweet touch almost constantly. Even at work, when she was supposed to be concentrating on something else, she found her mind drifting and wandering back to that handsome cab ride and those sweet.
Censored.
Every time she thought about it, her whole body got a little bit warm and she almost started to perspire. The effect that just the thought of this man had on her was a bit frightening and overwhelming. But no matter how much she wanted to give in, she was adamant about forcing herself to take it slow and make Richard prove himself to her. She was seriously considering letting him be the first to initiate her into the ways of physical love, but she had to be sure. He had to prove that she was not just one of his throwaways. He had to prove that he wanted her. I hear that, but you can't work all the time. It's not healthy for the soul, Richard remarked. Says the biggest workaholic I know, Angela retorted. Touché, Richard replied. You guys ready? Naomi shouted. Angela and Richard raised their hands as Naomi tossed the ball up and hit a strong serve that sailed over the net. Richard instantly sprang into action and returned the ball back across the net, sailing right past the feet of Teddy, who watched it swoosh by him with a dumbfounded look on his face. That was great, Angela gasped. Richard winked at her. She tried to hold back the blush, which only intensified as Richard performed athletic feat after athletic feat, dominating the court and making all of them feel like they had no business being out there. Angela was amazed at the physical prowess of the man. He was moving with agility and strength that a man 15 years younger could not have mustered. The man was a sexy machine, that was for sure. After the third game, Angela and Naomi were completely beat, and they all decided to call it quits. Angela and Richard had won each and every game by a large margin. Naomi and Teddy were getting increasingly frustrated, and by the third game were bickering like some old married couple. If there was any romantic spark between them at all to begin with Naomi there was a chance of that with any somewhat good-looking, successful guy in her vicinity. It had all been dashed to smithereens by the middle of the second match. It was rather entertaining to see how flustered they were. Angela felt that she held her own, and she had made several great shots, but nothing like what Richard had accomplished. He might have won the game if she had not even been there. There was not one ball that got past him if it landed anywhere near him. Well, this has been fun, Teddy said, trying to not appear as out of breath as he clearly was. Richard, old friend, I've got to be off. I have a lunch date scheduled with a lady friend of mine. Richard shook Teddy's hand. Teddy said goodbye and nodded politely at Naomi before making his departure. Angela wondered how much of what Teddy did was a complete act and fabrication. He reminded her of some old stately British gentleman when he was just a kid from a wealthy section of Queens. I'm going to take off too, Naomi said. I'll see you later, Angela. Angela observed Richard's face as his only daughter walked away without so much as a goodbye. It was cold, and Angela felt bad for him. His eyes were still beaming with pride and love for the daughter who practically ignored him. It was a horrible situation, and Angela was not sure how much longer she could continue biting her.
Censored.
With Naomi. The girl needed a wake-up call in the worst possible way. I thought she was getting better, Angela said. What? Richard asked, moved from his thoughts. Well, with the party and everything, she seemed like she finally was starting to break down some of the walls that she has built between you two all these years. That speech you gave was beautiful, and I saw some love and tears in her eyes for the first time in a while. What happened? She did weaken briefly. She got caught up in the emotion of everything, but one good night's sleep and waking up in a different environment was all that was needed for the old Naomi to come back into the picture. It's okay. I didn't think it was going to work miracles. I didn't do it hoping to win her over. I did it because I love her, and I wanted her and everyone else to see how proud I am of my little girl who is a little girl no longer. That's what I'm talking about. I know how much you love her. How can she not see it? How can she not feel that bond that you have with her? I think she does feel it. And it
censored
her off. Why? Because it reminds her that she is directing her anger towards the wrong person. She refuses to believe anything bad about her mother. Since she was old enough to form her own thoughts and opinions, Stephanie has been her whole world, and when she just up and left the family behind, Naomi didn't know how to process that. So she just lashed out at me. And she's still doing it. She's a grown woman, she knows what she's doing is wrong, but her fear and her pain won't let her give in. She's terrified of what might happen inside of her if it did. I wish some of your insight would rub off on my parents, Angela said. Your parents are good people. A little misguided at times, as all parents are, but you know that when it comes to you, they're convinced that they're always doing the right thing. Angela blushed. You're right. I hate that about you. Why are you always right about everything? She teased. Richard blushed slightly. I'm not always right. I like to think that I know what is right when I see it, but there are times when I don't have all the answers. It's just something that comes along with time. You'll get there. What? Are you saying I'm too young to be so insightful? Angela teased. No, I'm saying you're too young to become this embittered and disillusioned with the world, Richard replied. Okay, well that's better, I guess. I do like to keep my positivity, and I hope it stays around for a good long while. I'm sure it will. Did Nick send you the pictures yet? Angela felt her face start to glow. Yes. He did. They're fantastic. I can't believe it's really me. Of course it's you. I told you, you have the kind of raw talent that is given to the very few. Oh, I bet you say that to all the girls, Angela said. She felt weird reciting such a cliched line, but she was too tired to really think of anything wittier. She was a bit preoccupied thinking about just sliding down into a warm, sweet bubble bath. That would hit the spot. It would hit the spot even better if the sexy Richard Kane would join her. But she knew it was too soon for that, far too soon. But it was definitely in the cards for the future. She could tell that. Only the ones named Angela Walters, Richard said with a smile. So, what are you up to the rest of the day? Angela asked. She felt odd that she had let that slip out of her mouth, but she had been so taken aback by the blushing comments he just said that she let slip the first thing that came to her mind. No plans really, Richard said. What did you have in mind? I didn't have anything in mind, I was just making conversation. You're a very curious individual, Angela said, admiring her own remarkable ability to improvise and cover the slip-up so well. Well, it just so happens I do have a very busy day planned. I have a golf game in a bit, with a few colleagues of mine. It's mostly fun, but of course, when it involves colleagues, there's going to be some business done at some point. So it's a little boring, but not totally. Do you play? Golf? Oh, I have played, but I'm really not that into it. My dad loves it though. He used to drag me to play it every Sunday when I was a kid. For some reason, it was his way of having strong father-daughter time. Well, that is an important thing to get. It's not always easy for fathers to relate to daughters on their own level, so we reach out at anything we can possibly think of to bond over. It's rarely successful, but daughters need to be aware that we are trying and that they should love us for it. Angela smiled at Richard. I guess I never really thought of it that way, but I do hate the game. It's too much walking around and accomplishing nothing. You just have to appreciate the quiet nature of the game. It's really more about communing with nature than anything else, I think. Maybe, I'll give it a shot sometime. I have to go, but it was great seeing you again. Sure thing. Let's get together this week some night. I'm not taking no for an answer, no excuses, Richard said with a smile. Angela shook her head. The man was impossible, and she loved that about him. That was the kind of persistence she was looking for. Okay, it's a date. Great. I'll say hi to your dad when I see him, Richard said. When will that be? In about 2 hours on the golf course, Richard said with a wink as he walked away. Angela felt strange suddenly. She wondered if anything about her would come up during the golf game, and who else might be in on this game. She knew that it shouldn't matter. After all, she was a grown woman, and if she wanted to allow Richard Kane to pursue her, then that was her own business. But for some reason she felt like she was doing something naughty that her father was going to punish her for. Of course, his punishment typically meant he would lecture her to death. She was surprised her own father had not become a lawyer. Not only did he have the analytical brain for it, and the innate ability to tell when anyone was not being completely truthful about something, but he could talk and talk about a simple topic until you were so sick of hearing it that you would say whatever he wanted just to get him to shut the hell up. As Angela walked back to the locker room, she thought about Naomi and how she was going to blow up if she knew about her and Richard. It was not going to be a pretty scene, and it was possible she might lose a friendship over it, at least initially, but she had decided it was worth it. It was not worth it because she was already falling in love with Richard, but it was worth it because she knew that this was not anyone else's business, and no one really had the right to be upset about it. Especially Naomi. Her father could do what he wanted, and Angela could do what she wanted. If Naomi was willing to dissolve their friendship over something so silly, then that was just her problem. Angela was tired of thinking about it and worrying. Besides, it was still too early to tell what was going to happen with it all. She kept using the term falling in love when she thought about Richard. Was it true? Did she really feel that way? She still hardly knew the man in that way, but with what she already knew and the way she had found herself becoming fixated on him over the past few years, it really didn't feel that fast. She felt like it was something that was slowly brewing for quite some time, and now it was ready. This was the time to experience the love that was possible for the two of them to feel. But did Richard feel the same way? That was a different story. He was naturally flirty and full of confidence, so it was tough to tell when he was being seductive intentionally or when he was being himself, which was also very seductive. He probably wasn't even really aware of it. Angela finished her shower and changed back into her street clothes. Then she went to the mall to do some shopping. That always took her mind off things. And that was exactly what she needed now. Chapter 7. Oh, this tortellini is the best. It is simply to die for, Robert Walters said as he finished his dish. He pushed back from the table and held back a burp until he was satisfied. Angela was only mildly grossed out, but she was pretty much used to this. They were eating dinner at Da Vinci's, her father's favorite Italian, and so far everything had been going pretty smoothly. Her mother was prattling on about this engagement and that engagement that she presently had in the works, and how well the new fragrance was doing that they had just launched. It had been her idea and her pet project. Robert had been a bit hesitant to make the slight leap from fashion to fragrance, but he left Jane in charge of it, and it had been a fairly successful launch. Angela was a bit shocked that her father and mother had asked her to dinner on a Sunday night, especially at the last minute, but it turns out the Guernseys were suddenly unavailable due to some illness in the family, and they'd had to rush out of town. Angela felt pretty certain that was a total crock, and she had a feeling her parents knew it too, but it was rather unspoken. The Guernseys had been their closest neighbors in all the years they had resided in Manhattan. Angela knew them quite well. They were nice people, but they were in fact painfully boring as hell. But for some reason, every so often, her parents felt the need to have dinner with them. It was very odd. It was very good. I usually don't care for tortellini, but I thought this was splendid, Angela's mother said. I'm surprised you ate any pasta. Aren't you totally averse to carbs, Mom? Angela asked. She loved to kid her mother about her constant inability to stick to any one diet. She was always on some new diet plan, and after a week or two she would chuck it for another flavor-of-the-month weight loss plan that was destined to work. Of course, her mother was barely a size 6 and didn't need to lose weight unless she wanted to disappear, but it was true that once a model, always a model. At least in the mind. Her mother still ate like she was getting ready for a big photo shoot. Angela wondered if she would have to start monitoring every ounce of food that went into her mouth soon. Nick had called her earlier and told her that one of the agencies he did work for loved her pictures. They felt that there was something raw and pure in her that they had not really seen before, and they knew that she could be a new up-and-coming talent. Angela had almost wet herself with joy. She instantly phoned Richard, who offered his congratulations. It felt so sweet to have his approval, and she thanked him profusely for setting it all up. If it hadn't been for him, then she never would have taken the plunge. Now she just had to break the news to her parents. "So you played some golf today, Dad?" Angela asked. She figured that talking about her father's greatest passion might be a good let-in. "That I did." "How did you do?" "Not bad, not bad." "How did you know I played today?" "Oh, I ran into Richard Kane at the country club this morning and he mentioned you guys were playing." "Oh yeah? I meant to talk to you about him," Robert said. "Yes?" Angela asked nervously. "I think he has designs on you," Robert replied. "What? What are you talking about?" Angela asked. "Robert, don't go jumping to conclusions," Jane added. "I'm not. The man tells me today, when we were playing golf, that he helped Angela get a modeling portfolio together. The only time that man goes out of his way to help a beautiful young woman out like that is when he is interested in her romantically." "That's preposterous. You can't judge something like that," Angela said. "Are you denying that he is interested in you?" Angela was quiet a moment. She figured it was now or never. "So what if he is?" Angela asked. "Angela, surely you can't be serious," her mother began. "It's disgraceful," her father chimed back in. "Why? Why is it disgraceful? What is wrong with it? He likes me and I like him. The man is my age." "That is very strange, don't you think?" Robert asked. "No, I don't think it's strange at all. He's an attractive and successful man who seems to think that I am very special. He thinks all beautiful women are special. You really don't know him as well as you think you do." "Really? So he really thinks you have what it takes to be a model?" her father asked. "Yes. As a matter of fact, he does, and so do I. And so does Nick, the photographer Richard introduced me to, and Madeline Kale." "Madeline Kale? What are you talking about?" Robert asked. "Nick sent my pictures to the Kale group, and Madeline responded back that they are very interested in me. That's right, they love my pictures." "Well, honey, that is great. I am very happy for you," Jane said. "What about you, Dad? Are you happy for me too? Are you eating your words about now?" Angela said. The anger was really welling up deep inside of her now. "I'm happy for you too," Robert said. "That is terrific news." "I don't believe you. All my life I've dreamed of being a model, and you both steered me clear of it. You would never even let me speak about it growing up. Why? Did you not think I was good enough?" "It's not that. We knew that you could be anything you wanted to be. You have the brains and the beauty to conquer the world, sweetie," Robert said. "Then why? Why did you refuse to ever give me this chance?" "We were trying to protect you. This business chews people up and spits them out. It's not the type of environment we wanted you to become a part of," Jane said. "I've been there, I know what it's like. We wanted something better for you." "I don't believe it. You never thought for a moment to let me make that decision for myself?" "We wanted what was best for you. We love you, and like your mother says, we were trying to keep you safe," Robert said. I could understand that when I was a child, but not now. When I grew up, when I turned 18, you wouldn't hear of it then either. You just dismissed it any time I thought of it, until I had almost forgotten about the dream entirely. Until Richard Kane revived it in me. I don't want you to see that man romantically, Robert said. He is a womanizer. He will throw you aside when he gets bored with you. Just wait and see. He is one of your closest friends. How can you think so lowly of him? Angela asked. He is a good friend to us. We're not impressionable young girls that he is trying to woo into bed. That's ridiculous. I know his history. I know that he has a reputation, but I also know that people like to form opinions of others to make themselves feel better, and they are hardly ever fully accurate. I am old enough to decide what goals I pursue, and I am old enough to decide what man I want. Angela threw down her napkin and stormed out of the restaurant. She didn't want to make a scene, but she wasn't able to keep her voice down to a low level anymore, and it was going to end up a huge embarrassment if it went on any further. She really wished she had waited until she got the two of them alone, but she didn't want to go back home with them, and with her having her own place now, she realized it might not be something that could happen anytime soon. The air outside had an instant calming effect on her, and she took several large, deep breaths. She felt the sudden urge for a cigarette and dismissed it quickly. She had not picked up a nasty cigarette since she was 18, and she didn't intend to break her streak now. It had been silly to give in to peer pressure when she was 15, and while there were a lot of worse things she could have become addicted to, she hated every single time she put one of those cancer sticks in her mouth. But during times of great stress, she found herself wishing for one and the calmness that followed a good smoke. She hailed the first cab she could and gave the cabbie her address. As she rode in silence, ignoring the cab driver's lame attempts at conversation, she thought about the heated exchange between her and her parents at the restaurant. She would probably call them later tonight or in the morning, and they would smooth things over. It was easy to understand where they were coming from on both counts, but the way her father said things, as if she was a little girl and she was going to be sent to her room if she didn't do exactly as he said, set her off, and she found the rage overwhelming. It had always been that way between them. Any time she had decided to step up and place a limit or a boundary to the level of control she was going to let her parents have over her, it was a bit of a power struggle. She didn't know if it was normal or if it was just something unique that her family did. Her friends had much worse relationships with their parents, so she assumed that she was actually pretty lucky. But it was still very difficult at times. The second she walked through her door, she grabbed herself a vodka tonic and sat down to rest. It was funny the way that stepping into her house really was like stepping into a sanctuary where all of her problems just melted away. She was in that very chair that she was now sitting in when she had received the phone call that was possibly going to change her life. Nick had phoned her to say that Madeline would be calling her in the next day or two, and they were going to talk about their interest in her and the portfolio. She wasn't sure she was going to be able to sleep that night. The excitement that was coursing through her veins was non-stop adrenaline. It was the type of giddiness that one might feel on their wedding day or the night of the big prom date. She had replayed the conversation with Nick over and over in her mind. She didn't think that it would ever leave her. She wished that Richard had been there with her. Being with him would have made it all so complete. She wanted him so badly. The way he made her feel was too intense for words, and despite what her parents said, she knew who he was much better than they did. She could see behind the man's disguise that he wore to present to the outside world. 10 minutes later, Angela found herself sitting in her jacuzzi upstairs. She loved to end the day with a nice drink and a hot jacuzzi bubble bath. It had been calling her name all evening, and now it was definitely hitting the spot. If only Richard had been there to hit all the other spots. She thought about calling him. She glanced at her phone and just wondered what he would think if she called him up and invited him over for a hot jacuzzi bubble bath. She doubted he would turn her down. Oh, it was so tempting and inviting, but she couldn't do it. She would no doubt lose all control and just surrender to him. She really wanted the time to be right. As she thought more about it, she realized, perhaps for the first time, that she didn't want to lose it to anyone but the person she was married to. It was really old-fashioned thinking, and she was not at all opposed to premarital.
Censored.
For moral or religious reasons, but she loved the romance of it. She loved the idea that she belonged to just one person, mind, body, and soul. Was Richard Kane that person? She hoped so. She found herself constantly dreaming of it happening. She wanted everything to get better and better between the two of them. The next morning, Angela awoke with the burning thought in her mind that she had to tell Richard the decision she had made. She had never told anyone that she was a virgin, and now that she had actually decided to wait until marriage, she couldn't string Richard along like that. He had to know, and she had to know if he saw enough of a future in what they had to wait and continue to pursue this relationship, knowing that it may never have full physical fulfillment. It was just after 7 in the morning, but she figured that he was up. A man like Richard was probably already doing business. He didn't strike her as the type of man who slept in very long. She admired his commitment to the important things in his life. It was one of the sexiest things about him. Even if he was not rich and powerful, just seeing the passion that he had for anything he did and the
Censored.
to reach his goals was a very attractive quality. Angela had always been turned on by such things in a man. "Hello?" Richard answered. He sounded slightly out of breath, and for a moment Angela thought the worst, but then she heard traffic in the background. "Richard?" Angela asked. "Hey, how's it going? Strange hearing from you this early," Richard said. "Is this a bad time?" "No, I'm just out for my morning jog. I could use a quick break." Angela felt a sigh of relief, and she instantly felt stupid for thinking that Richard might be in the middle of carnal pleasure with someone else. But then again, even if he was, they had not committed to being in a relationship with each other yet anyway. She hoped that would change soon. "I was hoping we could have dinner tonight. I really need to speak with you," Angela said. "Sure. Why don't you come over to my place at 7? I'll have my butler whip up something fabulous. We will make a great night of it." "Okay, that sounds good." "Great. I'll see you then, beautiful." "Okay," Angela said as she ended the call. She loved it when he called her beautiful. She knew she was very attractive, and the fact that she was on the budding cusp of a career in modeling was really solidifying that, but hearing that from his mouth always made her blush. She took several deep breaths as she got out of bed. Richard was already up at this ungodly hour, and he was finishing a jog. It had been a while since she had been jogging. It used to be something that she did all the time, but as her college years went on and she became more and more comfortable with sleeping in, she decided that she didn't care for it anymore. But that was about to change. Knowing that she might have a real chance in realizing her dreams of being a top model, she had to start to adopt the lifestyle and habits of a model. She was not concerned with being anorexic and having the scrawny eating disorder look that used to be popular, but she could be a bit more toned and maybe drop a few pounds. Too many parties and too much champagne could really wreak havoc on your body if you didn't pay attention to it. Before she knew it, she was ignoring her instincts to grab a bagel and load it with cream cheese while having her morning coffee. Instead, she was lacing up her running shoes and hitting the pavement. It was beautiful outside, and she was glad she had made this decision the second she stepped outside. Her conditioning was not quite as bad as she thought it was, but she still felt that she needed to be in much better shape. After about a mile, her legs felt like they were ready to fall off, and the pain in her side was becoming almost unbearable. She had not stretched nearly enough, and she was quickly learning that lesson, but it was a valiant effort for her first day back to jogging. As she walked back to her apartment, she made the vow that she would start jogging at least 2 miles every day and hoped to have that stretched up to 5 miles with 6 weeks. It was a lofty goal, but she was dead set on it. It would feel good to achieve this. The day flew by, and before she knew it, she was arriving at Richard's luxury penthouse apartment. He greeted her at the door, and the instant she stepped inside, she could smell the amazing food that had been prepared. She wondered if Richard's butler was as good in the kitchen as her parents' butler, but from just the aroma of the food that he had fixed, she was going to have to say yes to that one. Angela had actually spent the entire day pampering herself, mostly as a distraction from watching the clock all day, as she nervously awaited Richard's response to what she had to tell him. She also realized that she had been neglecting a few of the bare essentials that any self-respecting model had to stay on top of. First, she went to Nail City to get a manicure and a pedicure. It had been a few months, and she could instantly feel what she had been missing. The stress of life just seemed to wash out of her as the staff went to work on her. After her nails were taken care of, she went to the beauty salon for a touch-up. Her hair just needed a trim, and she wondered if her regular guy, Alejandro, could work some magic and make something special happen. Of course he did. He was a master at doing very little, and making something pop in an unexpected way. Her hair had the same style, but there was some obvious life breathed into it. Finally, she had treated herself to a spa day with a deep tissue full-body massage and a paraffin dip on her hands and feet. It was spectacular. After all of this, she had time to run home and grab a quick 2-hour nap before she had to get ready for her date with Richard. Now here she was in his apartment wearing her best dress. She knew that she looked good enough to awaken a man from a coma, and she could tell by the way that Richard's eyes popped out of his head at the sight of her that he felt the same way. "Well, hello," Richard said. He instantly wrapped her in a warm embrace and
censored
her gently on the lips. It was a soft, sweet greeting,
censored,
but it was still as electrifying as she remembered it being in the handsome cab. "How are you?" Angela asked. "I am much better now. You look even more incredible than usual." "How is that possible?" "It's blowing my mind away," Richard said. "Well, thank you. I have to return the compliment." "I'll accept," Richard said with a smile. Only he could pull off a statement that
censored.
She couldn't help but smile at the cheek of it. The dinner was fantastic. The butler, Daniels, prepared a luxurious 4-course banquet: caviar with crab, potato, and creme fraiche to start, pan-seared scallops with a cauliflower puree, a slow-roasted lamb rump that was so succulent it melted in the mouth, and a delicious salted caramel tart with quince curd ice cream. Angela had not indulged in such amazing food, and certainly not so much, for a long while, and she realized that it might have been counterproductive to her new commitment to health and fitness. After dinner, she and Richard retired upstairs to his billiard room. He had told her of his love for this game, and she had to admit that she had always been a fan as well. But she wasn't prepared for exactly how good he. She was starting to see a pattern here. Richard was apparently better at everything than everyone else. But he was not the least bit
censored
about it. That was what she loved. It had been a while since she'd had the stick in her hands, but she came back to it naturally, and she actually won a few rounds, though she had the feeling that Richard was holding back some for her benefit. She thought that was rather sweet. After the game, they sat down on the leather sofa on the side of the room near the mini bar, and Richard mixed together a few martinis. As they sipped their drinks, Angela felt the part of the evening she had been both dreading and looking forward to. "So, I sense that something is on your mind. You did say there was something you wished to speak to me about," Richard said as he sat down with his second martini. Angela was still on her first. "Yeah, this isn't easy for me to say," Angela began. "Just out with it. That is the easiest way to say something difficult. There's no reason to let it build within you, where it's doing damage. Let it out," Richard said. Angela took a deep breath. "I really like you, Richard. In fact, I find myself falling very strongly for you, and I hope you feel the same way as I do." Richard sat his drink down and held her hands in his. "I do, Angela. I'm so glad to hear that, but there is something I have to be truthful with you about," Angela said. She took a deep breath. "I'm a virgin." Richard flinched for a second, but it was more of a look of surprise than shock or judgment. "I see," Richard said. "You aren't experienced in the ways of love." "No, not that way." There is nothing to be nervous about, Richard said.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Angela pulled her head back and stood up, pacing in front of the couch. She tried to catch her breath and allow her body and hormones to return to their normal state. What's wrong? Richard asked. I can't do this. I have to finish telling you what I came to tell you. Are you putting an end to us, Angela? Richard asked. What? No. I don't think so. I don't want that. I'm falling completely in love with you, I'm sure you can feel that, Angela said. I think I do. But there's more I have to tell you if we're to continue on with this, Angela said. Okay, I'm all ears, Richard said as he leaned back on the couch. I want my first act of physical love to be on my wedding night. Angela breathed heavily, relishing in the weight that she had just taken off her shoulders. She waited for Richard's reaction. His face was neutral, his eyes were calm, yet serious. She wasn't getting a real read on him here, and the silence was unbearable as he squinted slightly as if he were deep in thought. I understand, Richard said. Really? Yes, of course. I understand how you feel, and I absolutely respect that. I'm so glad to hear you say that, Angela said. But what does that mean for us? What do you mean? Richard asked. Well, do you still want to pursue us? I mean, it is possible that what we have might never reach that level. Richard smiled at her warmly. Angela, I feel closer to you than I've felt to any woman in so long. I don't just want your body, I want you. I think what we have is special. I know that given enough time, it can turn into something that most only dream of. I trust that enough to give up the physical pleasures of the flesh for what we have. Angela wiped her eyes as the tears began to fall down. She could not believe those words were leaving Richard's lips. Was he really serious? Oh wow, that is such a relief, Angela said. Richard stood up and wrapped her in his arms. He
censored
her softly on the lips again and held her face to his. His warmth was so sweet and kind. Angela felt that when she was in his arms like this, that there was nothing in the world that she couldn't do, and nothing in the world that could harm her. It was the safest she had ever felt. She had not even realized that she felt insecure a lot of the time until she was being held by Richard, and this overwhelming sense of peace was washing over her. Has this been worrying you? You should have talked to me sooner, Richard said. Well, we only just started to make our romantic feelings known to each other. I like to take things slow, and I was sure that you would turn from me, Angela said. Well, I guess I still have a few surprises up my sleeve to keep things interesting for you, Richard said. He pulled a small remote control out of his pocket just then and pressed a button, flooding the room with romantic music. Angela had to laugh. Richard was right, he was full of surprises. As they danced, the silence between them was sweet and warm. It was not the least bit awkward or strange. After everything that had been discussed, Angela thought it would have been a bit tense, but it was as smooth as silk, it just felt right. Richard was the guy she thought he was. She was beginning to understand that now. She could sense the slightest bit of hesitation that was dwelling deeply inside of her, starting to retreat. With everything that everyone had told her about him all these years, and with what she herself had seen from him in public, it made sense for her to harbor some reservations about him. But since they had become romantic, her expectations were repeatedly blown away. I have an idea, Richard said as she looked deeply into her eyes. His smile was as inviting as always, and there was a playful curiosity dancing behind the beauty of his eyes right then. What's that? Angela responded playfully. How about we go away for the weekend? I have a beautiful home in Hawaii, and I haven't been there in a while. It's been crazy at work for so long that I'm getting a bit burnt out. I could use the break, and I could really use the company. Angela thought for a moment. This could be serious, it sounds enticing, but what about what we just spoke about? What about it? I have plenty of space there. You will have your own room. It will be a blast. We can surf and enjoy the fine food on the island. Have you ever been? Once, when I was 11. I loved it. They have the bluest, clearest water I've ever seen. It's like another world down there. That it is. What do you think? Will you accompany me? Angela mulled it over for a few moments, but Richard's charm proved to be too much for her to say no. Okay, but you behave yourself, Angela said as she
censored
him. Oh, I'll be on my best behavior, Richard said between
censored
as they continued to dance. Her head started to spin a little bit again, but she smiled at the feeling. It was something she was probably going to have to get used to, with this perfect specimen of a man she was falling in love with. She closed her eyes and listened to the music moving their bodies back and forth. Angela rested her head against Richard's strong
censored
as they danced slowly. It was the perfect end to a perfect evening. Chapter 8. Angela stepped out of the billiard room and almost stepped right into another body standing there totally unexpectedly. She caught herself before she fully collided into them, their figure just a blur, as Angela grasped wildly to hold onto something to keep from falling to the hardwood floor close to the railing that overlooked the 20-foot drop to the first-floor living room at the foot of the winding staircase. As her bearings came to order, she noticed that she had almost bumped into Naomi standing there. She was definitely the last person Angela expected to see right there at that time. It was getting late, and Naomi had her own apartment 6 blocks away that her father had given her as a graduation gift. Angela still found it odd, with all the things that Richard did for his daughter, how she could still treat him the way she did. Now that Angela and Richard were becoming an item, it was really starting to
censored
Angela off. Whoa, Naomi. I didn't see you there, Angela said. Too busy with your head in the clouds with my father, I see, Naomi said. Angela felt her heart sinking at the realization that Naomi had heard them. She knew why Angela was there. If she didn't, then she was going to have questions anyway as to why Angela was there at that time of night. How much had she heard, though? Angela realized that this was a confrontation she had been dreading, but it was good to get things out in the open. It was silly to hide them away like children. Naomi, wait a second, you don't know what's going on, Angela said. Oh, I can put 2 and 2 together just fine. I thought there was something up with you too. I could see it at the party and at the country club, but I didn't really believe it. There was something different about the way you were with each other. Looking back now, it all makes sense. You're sleeping with my father. How dare you? Naomi, I'm not sleeping. Save it. Angela was wondering what was taking Richard so long in the billiard room. He had asked her to go downstairs, and they would have some dessert before she went home if she wished. He was going to put away the pool sticks and clean up the bar really quickly. Surely he heard the commotion here. Naomi was getting really loud. I know what is going on. How could you? You think that now my dad is helping you with a modeling career, and that entitles you to sleep with him? You know how I feel about my dad, and what he's done to ruin my life. You're being so childish, you always have been. Your father didn't ruin your life. Your mother left because of her, not him. She could have stayed close by and been a part of your life. You just refused to see it. She is the one who tossed you aside. Your dad has always been here. Angela argued. Naomi slapped her hard across the face, part of the blow landing on her ear. The entire world sounded like one huge beep, as the sting of her fingers echoed the blast on her face repeatedly. The pain was sharp and biting, but was quickly turning to a dull throbbing.
censored
The anger welled up in her, and Angela was hell-bent to return the blow as she pulled back, stepped forward, and began to swing her hard right hand. Something was pulling it back. Her head shot back to see Richard standing there holding her arms and pulling her away from Naomi. He suddenly released Angela and stepped in between the two girls as Naomi came forward, apparently ready to mix it up some more. What the hell is going on here? Richard shouted. Why don't you ask your new whore? Naomi shouted. Wait just a minute. You will not speak to her that way, Richard said in that commanding tone of his. Whatever. I'm done with this, Naomi said as she started to march away. Angela could now tell that Naomi was drunk as her steps were shaky, and for a second she wondered if someone should have been helping her down the steps, but her anger prevented her from caring very much right then. How dare Naomi attack her that way, and call her a whore? All because she was a spoiled brat who refused to see what a
censored
her mother really was. Nothing would ever get through to her. "Are you okay?" Richard asked, looking at the welts that were no doubt on her face now. The pain had subsided to a numb tingle, but the shock of it all was the real damage. Angela felt angry, hurt, betrayed, and heartbroken at the loss of her best friend. She just didn't get it. When would Naomi come around? When would it happen? The front door slammed as Naomi walked out. "She isn't going to drive, is she?" Angela asked. "No, she would never do that. She isn't that stupid. I'm sure she'll have my driver Bailey take her home." "Good," Angela said. 10 minutes later, Angela was sitting at the mini bar, having another drink, as she waited for the events of the evening to settle down inside of her mind. She was thinking about all of the stupid little events and bouts of mischief that she and Naomi had gotten into since they were kids. Were those days gone forever now? Was there no getting back to the way things were? She just didn't know. It was quite possible that she had just lost her best friend for good. "I just don't get why she hates you so much. Surely she has to be over it all by now," Angela said, shaking her head. "I thought I understood the extent of it, but the way she was tonight makes me wonder. I just don't understand her rage." "I do," Richard said. Angela looked at him. There was something about his demeanor that said he had more to tell her than she probably should know. There was something else going on that she wasn't aware of. "What? What is it?" Angela inquired. "I'm telling you this because I value your friendship with my daughter, and I value our relationship as well. You've always been a great friend to her, and she has those in short supply. I would never forgive myself if I didn't at least try to keep this for her." "What's going on?" "Naomi's real mother is a woman named Lainey Watson. She was a model I had a brief affair with many years ago. The girl turned out to have a horrible substance abuse problem, and she was in no position to raise a child, so I gained full custody of Naomi. A year after Naomi was born, I married Stephanie. Naomi never knew that Stephanie wasn't her real mother. Looking back on it, I realize it was hasty and stupid of me to jump into a marriage with a woman that I didn't really know as well as I thought I did and wasn't truly in love with, but I loved my little girl so much that I had to make sure she had a good mother. I thought Stephanie was that woman, but really she was pretending. She never intended to be a good mother to Naomi. She wanted to just let hired staff take care of her and be the trophy wife of a wealthy man. By the time I realized this, Naomi was a bit older, and she loved her mother dearly. So I stuck it out the best I could." "I had no idea," Angela said. "Does Naomi know now?" "I'm getting to that. I cheated on Stephanie out of loneliness and a moment of weakness. We'd been fighting a lot and rarely slept in the same bed anymore. After one of our insane arguments, I went out to a bar to clear my head and have a few drinks. I met a woman there, and we started an affair. One day, I made the mistake of inviting her to the house when I thought Stephanie had gone upstate to visit her family. She came back earlier than expected and caught us. Surprisingly, Stephanie was devastated. She really did love me, and she felt betrayed by this indiscretion. So she abruptly divorced me, took a big wad of money from me in the settlement, and went to Europe. Naomi never understood why her mother didn't want her. She just didn't know, and I never had the heart to tell her. So I kept it a secret for as long as I could." "So what happened? Did Naomi find out?" Angela asked. "Stephanie eventually told her, after she tired of Naomi's constant attempts to contact her. She did it solely to hurt me, because of the way I had hurt her, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Naomi blamed me for lying to her, and in a sense, she's right. I did lie to her all those years, but she loved her mother so much that I just couldn't tell her the truth. I was going to tell her when she was older, and was better able to understand that it didn't matter if she was born to Stephanie or not. But of course, I couldn't really do that since I knew how Stephanie felt about Naomi. She was a cross she had to bear as part of her affluent trophy wife lifestyle. The woman duped me, like I never thought I could be duped. I feel like a fool every time I think about it. But I was a much younger man then, and I still had the idea that the world wasn't the nasty place it often turns out to be. It's not your fault. Naomi should realize that, Angela said. I can only imagine how much it hurt, but I don't think she's mad at you. I think she's mad at Stephanie, but she still loves the image of the mother she has known her whole life so badly that she needs it to feel normal, even though she knows it's a sham. I hope you're right, but she continues to torture me and take it all out on me. It may be something that she never gets over. Maybe she feels that the feelings of anger and betrayal that are dwelling inside of her are your fault, because you lied to her about Stephanie to begin with. I don't know. I've spent hours upon hours trying to reason with her, and trying to talk to her, but she refuses to listen. Why is she so against you dating? I get the impression she hates every woman that you've come in contact with. Yeah, she does. I think she feels that each woman is a reminder of the affair I had, which shattered her perfect life. Even though her perfect life was largely an illusion? Angela asked. Yeah, I guess so. Angela thought for a moment. Maybe it isn't that. Perhaps she feels that a woman might take you away from her. No matter the fact that she feels you lied to her all her life, and that she thinks you're responsible for all of her pain. She feels like a woman might jeopardize the fact that you're always going to be here for her, and she really has no one else. Or it might be a mix of those things. That has to tie her head in knots. With all of that going on in her head, it's a wonder she can even function. Right. I just have to keep letting her know that I love her, and no matter what happens, she will always be the number one woman in my life, Richard said. Angela smiled. She understood that. And she understood something else right then too. She leaned over and
censored
Richard, running her hand quickly through his wavy hair. I love you, Richard Kane. Richard smiled as he
censored
her back. I love you too, Angela Walters. Chapter 9. That was intense. Angela shouted as she ran ashore onto the beach. She had just ridden some of the most amazing waves in her surfing career. It had been like flying almost far above the land, and floating through the air like God had reached out of the sky and given her a little ride that no one else had ever really had the privilege to experience. Way to go, Richard said as she slapped her a high five before pulling her close to him. Angela had started surfing when she was just 8 years old. Her dad was an avid fan of the sport, and while he didn't have the coordination and balance to really do it well, he loved the ocean and made sure that she had the chance to spread her wings and explore everything in life. She had fallen in love with the beach right from the moment she saw it, and she could not stop hopping into the water. So her father hired a teacher to give her lessons, and she showed immediate promise. There was nothing like cutting through a great stack of waves on her board. Richard was amazing. His athleticism and flexibility on the surfboard were better than anyone she had ever seen who was not a pro. Was there nothing this man could not do? She was really beginning to wonder. When she asked him about it, he laughed it off as he usually did compliments. He was just not the guy who enjoyed bragging on himself at all. No, seriously? How did you get so good at so many things? Angela asked, refusing to take no for an answer. Richard sighed as if he was being forced to divulge some great secret, but he did it with his typical charm and grace. I'm a man who has a lot of interests, and when there is some new challenge or something I really want to be able to do, I fully immerse myself in it until I am happy with my progress. It's a great challenge that I love to undertake, and when I'm done, I'm so much better than I was before. So over the years I've done this with many things, and so now I've reached a level of competence in many different fields. So you're a true Renaissance man, Angela teased. Richard laughed. I guess you can call me that if it makes you feel comfortable. Richard grabbed his board, and jogged out for another set of waves. Angela wanted to go with him, but she was not in as good shape as he was. The man had endurance like she had never seen before. He could just keep going and going. It was pretty intense to watch, and it left her beaming with pride that the man who told her just a few nights ago that he loved her was full of so much energy and enthusiasm about things. It was infectious, to say the least. She kept thinking about when they told each other, "I love you." Angela could not believe that she had actually said it when it happened, but she just felt a beaming surge of love in that moment, and she just had to vocalize it. After the shock wore off that she'd said those words so soon, she realized that she didn't regret it and didn't want to take it back. She meant what she said. She did love him. She was no longer just falling in love. She felt that she had reached the stage where real love begins, and she was fully committed to it. When Richard said it back to her, the beating in her
censored
almost stopped, skipping over a few beats before resuming its normal rhythm. She had never had a man tell her that before, and it was more special than she had ever seen in any Hollywood movie or read in any romance novel. And she knew he meant it. She knew that without a second's hesitation. There was just something about the way he'd said it, the look in his eyes and the tone in his voice. It let her know that he was deadly serious, and that he wasn't just caught up in the moment as she'd feared. It was real. What they had was real, and it was just getting better. She hated that things had been left with Naomi the way they had, but she had to pick up and move on with her life. She and Richard deserved to be happy, and somewhere deep inside, when she really searched her soul and reached out to what she knew about her friend, she knew that Naomi would eventually come around. It might take a few weeks or even a few months. Hell, it might happen on their deathbed surrounded by grandchildren, but she knew that one day Naomi would feel that she was wrong, and she would reach out to make amends. Richard finished off his set, and came running back onto the shore carrying his board under his muscular arms. He was not wearing a wetsuit. It was not his style. He surfed with a skimpy pair of swim trunks and nothing else. Angela realized that this was the first time she had really seen Richard almost
censored,
and her jaw almost hit the ground the second she did. He was toned and lean, with a great tan and just the right amount of muscular definition showing. He almost had a swimmer's body, but with slightly more muscle. He was beautiful, and she automatically felt self-conscious in the wetsuit she was wearing. It clung hard to her body, and for some reason she felt that it made her ass look fat. "What are you staring at?" Richard said as he joined her. Up close, his body was even better looking. She just could not stop looking at this beautiful creature that had been created so immaculately. "Just looking," Angela said, slightly embarrassed as she looked away. She could feel the warm blush rushing up over her whole body in one giant wave, while she tried to stay rigid and still to show that she was not really checking him out. She wasn't sure why this was embarrassing for her, but with Richard she felt that she was constantly doing things that made her seem childish or even nerdy. She just wanted him to see her for who she was. "Oh yeah?" Richard said in a naughty whisper. He reached up and slid his hands slowly down her arms that were hanging at her side. His touch was cool but strong and smooth. She felt the tingles up and down her arms and even into her upper back, causing goose flesh on her neck. She tried to take a deep breath. Suddenly she felt a sharp pain. "What?" Richard asked, immediately concerned. Angela turned her arm and saw a big scratch moving along the outline of her tricep. It was bleeding slightly. "That sucks," Angela said. "I must have scraped it on a rock or something." "Yeah, that might leave a little scar," Richard said softly. "Great, just what I need. A scar. It's not like I'm trying to be a model or anything," Angela joked. "Ah, something like that is beautiful. It's a battle scar. It means you are tough and you take chances in life." "It's very sexy," Richard said, moving closer. He stepped behind her and began to slowly massage the back of her neck with his strong hands. This, combined with the goosebumps she was already experiencing, was almost too much. The tingles were magnified across her body as he continued to rub her neck, sliding slowly down into her shoulders. "You want to know the secret of removing scars?" Richard asked. "What's that?"
censored.
Richard bent down slightly and
censored.
her wound. His lips lingered on it, cool and soft. Somehow the slight pain she felt at the moment of impact on the sensitive skin was no match for the pleasure she experienced right after. It was such a moment, as Richard stood up and stepped in front of her again, pulling her to him. He
Censored.
her on the mouth and then pulled her head to his shoulder where he hugged her softly. "See, that's better already, right?" Richard joked. Angela could not help but laugh as she looked up into those magnetic eyes, and suddenly she felt like she was back on that handsome cab again, and the
Censored.
was coursing through them both, their bodies and minds filled with unbridled passion. Oh, how much longer? She needed him so badly. Richard gently led her over to the running shower, and wrapping his arms around her again, they both stood there with the water running over their heads and rolling down their bodies. Angela felt her
Censored.
getting more sensitive as she poked against Richard's hard pecs in the warm embrace. She was not sure she had ever had a sexier moment than this one. But luckily the cold water helped her curb her ravenous.
Censored.
At least for now. After they showered off, they went back to the hotel to change and get ready for lunch. Richard said he was going to take her to one of his favorite spots in Hawaii for food. She was curious as to if she had ever been there. It was doubtful because when her parents had brought her to Hawaii as a child, they ate at the same restaurant almost every night, a Mexican restaurant called Los Cinco Agaves. She may have had the name wrong, but she had not been overly impressed. It was Mexican food which she loved, but even after eating there 3 days straight, she was getting a bit sick of it. But her father didn't often like to try new things back then. His response to trying something new was to order a different dish at the same restaurant. Richard ended up taking her to Roy's Waikiki. It was the best seafood she had ever tasted. The waitstaff were amazing, and the decor was beautiful. The food was an adventure of flavor and exquisite style and taste. Richard clearly had a great sensibility when it came to food. She wondered how he managed to stay so slim, especially given his voracious appetite. He ate all of his meal and half of hers when she could not finish it. She figured she probably should have been put off by this, but she was actually impressed and a bit charmed by it all. "So, what do you have planned next?" Angela asked. Richard gave her a curious look, as if he was trying to decide if she was bluffing during a game of poker. It was dead sexy as he squinted his eyes and interlocked his fingers slowly while tilting his head back as if in deep thought. She couldn't help but blush. "What makes you think I have something else planned?" "Because I know you and how your devious little mind works," Angela replied. "Oh. Have I killed the mystery in the relationship already?" "Not at all. I just can't wait to see what you have in store next." Richard laughed as he continued to eat his dessert. "Let me ask you, Angela. Do you ever dream?" Richard asked. Angela paused a moment. She wasn't sure exactly what he was getting at. "I do occasionally." "Why do you ask?" Angela said. "I don't. I haven't had a dream I can remember in probably 10 years. At least I didn't dream until recently." "You mean you started having dreams again out of the blue? What about?" "I'm not sure what to really make of them. When I'm having the dream, it all seems to make perfect logical sense, but when I wake up, I feel a bit confused as I can only remember bits and pieces of them. But that isn't what I'm surprised by. I've racked my brain for a long time trying to figure out what it is that has led me to start dreaming again all of a sudden. And I feel that it has to be because of you." Angela didn't know what to say. This was the strangest, but possibly most beautiful thing she had ever heard. "I think that being with you has opened up something in me that I can't describe and never knew was there before. You have filled my head with a sense of wonder and adventure that I felt I was starting to lose. And I just wanted to thank you for that." The tears began to sting her eyes as she tried to speak over her choking sobs. The words he had just spoken to her cut right through the center of her and made her feel like she was more important than she had ever felt in her entire life. No one had ever told her that their life was better just because she was in it. "That is the most amazing thing that anyone has ever said to me," Angela said. Well, I'm sorry if I got you choked up, but I had to tell you that you make my life better. I can't remember a time in my life when I felt as stress-free as I have the past few weeks with you. Even with everything happening with Naomi, it helps me to get through the pain of that, just knowing that you are by my side. I just wanted to tell you how much you mean to me. Thank you. Richard held Angela's hand in his, and
censored
it sweetly as he gazed into her eyes. She was definitely falling harder and harder in love with this amazing man. How had she become so lucky? Where had this gift come from in her life when she needed it most? She didn't realize that there was a huge gap, a huge hole missing in her life until it was filled by the love that Richard was giving her. It was amazing and wonderful and altogether overwhelming at times, but she would not change a second of this ride for one moment. After lunch, they went shopping in the expensive district of Honolulu. The stores there were immaculate, filled with designs and clothing styles that she had never really seen before. Angela decided to buy as many wonderful treat items as she could. She decided that it was time for her to live a little, and that a little self-indulgence wouldn't do any harm. When she arrived at the cash register, Richard insisted on paying for everything. She tried to tell him that she would pay for her own things, but being the gentleman that he was, he refused to let her. She felt a bit guilty about allowing him to buy her things, but he was not a man to argue with. He seemed to insist that she get used to him spoiling her, and by the end of the afternoon she had made up her mind that she would allow herself to be pampered for a change. That night, as they were relaxing in front of the large television in the living room of Richard's huge Hawaiian getaway, Angela's phone buzzed. She almost didn't answer, because she was too enamored with snuggles with Richard on the couch. Sometimes it felt too good to get up for anything else. But as she checked the caller ID, she saw a number that she didn't recognize. At first, she thought it might be a telemarketer, but after a moment's thought, she realized it was a New York number and her heart fluttered. It might have been important after all. "Hello," Angela said. "Yes, Angela?" a woman's voice said on the other end. "Yes, speaking. This is Madeline Cale. How are you this evening?" "Oh, Mrs. Cale. I'm doing great. I've been expecting your call." "Madeline will do fine," she said. "Okay, Madeline," Angela replied. It sounded very businesslike and professional, and it made her feel important. "I'm sure Nick has told you that we are very interested in working with you, and I'm calling to set up a shoot if that is something you are interested in." Angela felt the huge weight in her bladder pressing hard, as she struggled to keep from wetting herself with excitement. She had never been this amped up about something before. It took every cell of concentration in her body to keep her voice smooth and normal. "Yes, I'd be very interested. What did you have in mind?" "It would just be a small shoot for starters. We are launching a new line of casual wear and dinnerware. So it would be modeling some clothes like those. Would you be free to do that, say, Tuesday afternoon?" "Oh, that sounds fine. Tuesday would be great," Angela replied. She thought momentarily about how mad her bosses would be at the firm about her taking another half day so soon after starting, but she had her eyes set on something much bigger and brighter. If they fired her, they fired her. That would just make her life that much easier, she felt. "Wonderful. Then we will email you the details and the location where the shoot will be set up. Please arrive at 1 p.m. for hair, makeup, and wardrobe." "I will. Thank you so much," Angela said. "I can't believe this." Her excitement was getting the better of her, as she could hardly sit still. "Believe it, because your life, young lady, is about to change," Madeline said before she ended the call. Angela thought she could hear the vaguest smile on the other end. Angela looked at the phone in her hand, and then back to Richard in total disbelief. That had just happened. The phone call she had been waiting her whole life to receive had just happened for her. She had just been hired for her first real modeling assignment. "Good news?" Richard asked with a grin that said he already knew what it was about. "Yes. That was Madeline Cale. She just hired me for my first photo shoot. I can't believe it." Angela was leaping off the couch and jumping around like a schoolgirl who had just been asked to the big dance by the cutest boy in school, and she had to tell all of her girlfriends about it right now so they could tell her how jealous they were and how amazing she was. "Congratulations," Richard said, jumping to his feet, sweeping her up in his strong arms and whirling her around a few times. He finished this off with a
censored,
as only he could. "This never would have happened if it weren't for you. I don't know how I can ever repay you," Angela said. "Hey, I didn't do anything except put an idea in your head that should have already been there. This is all about you, honey. You deserve it all, and I know you are destined to take the world by storm." Angela buried her face in his shoulder as he held her tightly. His warm embrace was the perfect thing for her right now, to keep her from totally flipping out over the excitement. With so many emotions whirling through her body at once, tears began to erupt and roll down the corners of her eyes and down her cheeks. "I'm so happy and so proud of you, baby," Richard said. "Thank you so much for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself," Angela said as she wiped the tears from her face. "Oh, baby. I will always believe in you, because I can see how amazing you are. I've known it for quite some time. Earlier you said that I have made your life better, and I've enabled you to dream again." "Well, you did that for me first, babe," Angela replied. Richard
censored,
her as he pulled her close. His warm, sweet lips were the perfect answer to all of the strong emotions that were pulling at her right then. She didn't know how she had lived so many years of her life without this amazing man in her corner. It was becoming clear to her that she had no idea the love and the support that she had missed out on. But she would not have forced it earlier if she had known then what she knew now. Everything happened at the perfect time. Chapter 10. The music was so loud that Angela could not hear herself think. The lights and the crowd were noisier still. As she stepped out onto the catwalk, she saw the flashing lights of photographers and paparazzi and the non-stop focus of television cameras. The room seemed to be spinning a bit as she took her first couple of steps. She had to get it together. This was it. This was the big time. This was everything that she had worked so hard for, and it was everything that she had wanted for her life since as far back as she could remember. It had been over 3 months since her first photo shoot after signing with Madeline Cale, and the past 12 weeks had been a roller coaster like she could never have imagined. Madeline was right on the money when she told Angela on that phone call that her life was about to change. Everything in her life had changed a complete 180 degrees. It was getting to the point that she hardly knew where to turn around anymore. Her days were filled with non-stop busy work, interviews, phone calls, television spots, and radio interviews. But she would not have stopped a minute of it. The first photo shoot had gone so well that she was instantly booked for 3 more. That was all it took for Angela to march into the law firm and tell them she resigned. The looks on the senior partners' faces were so priceless that it would be forever ingrained in her mind. It was beautiful. When her parents heard about the great things happening for her, they were surprisingly supportive and loving. It was the type of support that she had been craving from them, to follow her dreams since she was a child, and now it was finally happening. She was grateful for it all, but there was a part of her that still remembered the constant disappointment she felt at the way her parents never accepted what she wanted for herself, and never really believed that she could be where she ended up. That would always hurt, and it would haunt her probably for the rest of her life, but she was learning to forgive as best she could, and try to accept the reparations they both seemed to be trying to make for their relationship with her. Richard had been there with her, every step of the way as well. He continued to give her advice and guide her career. He had officially become her manager, much to the chagrin of Madeline and company, who preferred their models to be more along the lines of free agents. Richard calmly explained to Angela that was just so they could take advantage of the talent and not give them what they were worth. Angela had already figured that out, but it was nice having someone going to bat for her sometimes. Madeline Cale often forgot that Angela was not the typical model. She was, in fact, a Harvard-educated lawyer who had graduated at the top of her class and could argue and negotiate circles around her. Occasionally, Angela had to put someone in their place when they tried to take advantage. That is, if Richard didn't do it first. She and Richard spent every moment together that they could. It was about as close to living together as they could get, without actually living together. Their romance and their love had grown by leaps and bounds. Angela knew that they were destined to be together forever, and she was beginning to think that Richard saw that too. Since that evening in the billiards room, he never once insinuated or tried to initiate her into bed. He was still the constant and perfect gentleman in all ways, and Angela knew that she could trust him not only with her business, but also with her life. He was everything she had ever wanted in a partner. It had been a whirlwind 3 months, and now Angela was walking down the catwalk of her first real fashion show. She was one of 10 models chosen for the show, which was showcasing Kale's newest line of fall fashions for the career woman. The clothes were exquisitely beautiful, and Angela felt like she was becoming the biggest star in the world. She realized that she was, of course, far from that, but she was definitely someone that a lot of people in the industry were starting to notice, and the money and the offers were starting to roll in. She had a feeling that this show would really put her on the map. She mentally ran through the laundry list of steps she had to remember from all of her coaching and training. Head up, smile wide, chin down, back straight. Step 1 foot in front of the other but don't overlap. Maintain a nice slow breath and a steady pace. Make sure to make eye contact with as many people as possible on the left and the right as well. That was a huge rule. Apparently, this automatically made everyone feel that they were deeply engaged in what was going on. It was a lot to remember. Angela quickly ran through the checklist and then threw it away and just let natural instinct take over, hoping that it would all go smoothly. She knew she would never be able to act completely natural any other way. She was about halfway down the catwalk, modeling her first outfit, when she felt her foot joker backward. It felt like she was doing an unplanned split, and her body was not having it as it scrambled to correct her balance. Something was caught around her ankle, and it was pulling her harder and harder backward, as her body's momentum carried her forward. Before she realized it, she was stumbling down to the catwalk floor, her face now
censored.
The platform hard. Her lips smashed sharply against her teeth, and she tasted a fragment of blood. Her mind quickly drifted to images of chipped teeth and mashed, cut or bleeding lips that would have to be fixed or worked around for her current lineup of jobs. And then it was over. She was no longer falling anywhere. Her body had stabilized, and she was now able to stop fighting momentum and gravity and concentrate on whether or not she was actually hurt. Before she had a chance to properly assess her situation, she heard the gallop of footsteps running up behind her. It was a cacophony of models, makeup people, and show producers, who wanted to make sure that their main star was going to be okay, and continue to look her best as she modeled the clothes they had worked so hard to sell. Angela was now becoming aware of the gasps in the audience, and the full-on embarrassment she felt coursing through her body. It had to be the most humiliating thing she'd ever had happen to her. What in the hell was going on? Her question was quickly answered as the crowd of people gathering around her and helping her to her feet bombarded her with questions to make sure she was okay and let her know that it was not her fault. This sort of thing happened, and she could not let it get her flustered. This was her first show, and no one was laughing at her. She had to pull it all together. But it was not her fault. Angela clearly saw that now. There was a small piece of rope lying at her feet, draped across the catwalk and tied on one side to the bottom of the stage. The other end was loose and pointing to the crowd on the other side. Angela tried to squint through the glare of the lights to see who might have been sitting over there, who would do such a thing. It was probably some stupid kid who thought this would be the best way to impress his friends at school, or it might have been some college fraternity prank. It didn't matter to her because she was going to. A woman running through the crowd, running away. Her long dark hair flowed in the breeze as she weaved her way through the large group of people and chairs. She looked familiar. Naomi. She turned her head slightly back towards the stage for one brief instant, and Angela could clearly see her face. She had done this. She was trying to sabotage her career and teach her a lesson because Angela was continuing to see her father. She was hell-bent on destroying it all. Well, this was one thing she was not going to be able to destroy. Angela was damn sure going to make sure of this. She had to catch her. Angela stood up fully. "I'll be right back," she called as she jumped down off the side of the stage. She landed gently on the ground and was instantly hustling through the crowd, Naomi's head firmly in her sights. She was going to put an end to this crap right now. She had to confront Naomi and make her realize that nothing was going to keep her away from Richard. He made her happy, and she made him happy. Naomi had to know that she had to grow up and deal with her own issues and her emotions. Angela was out of the crowd and rushing down the corridor now. Naomi had made a turn and was temporarily out of her sights. She had to find the
censored.
She never thought she would be thinking of her best friend this way, but there was only so much that she could put up with. If Naomi wanted to trash the friendship for good, then that was her problem. Angela was not going to let her misbehave this way and attack her and everything she had worked so hard for. As she rounded the corner, what she saw stopped her dead in her tracks. Naomi was stopped. Richard was there, his arm holding onto her arm as if she were a 10-year-old girl who had done something very bad. In a sense, that was what had happened. Naomi was acting like a kid, and she was going to be treated like a kid. "Let me go," Naomi said. Angela tried to hang back, scooting back around the corner. She just wanted to hear what was being said, without interfering or possibly making this worse with her presence. "No. You have to understand something. This is not Angela's fault. Nothing you do will drive a wedge between us. You can't continue to act this way. It's not right." "Oh, a lecture from you about what's right? Give me a break. You lied to me my whole life," Naomi yelled, struggling in Richard's grasp. "I withheld the truth for your own protection, and when your evil stepmother told you, you couldn't handle it. Don't you dare say anything bad about my mother. She isn't your mother. I told you that. She didn't give birth to you, and she sure as hell didn't care about you. Sweetie, I hate to be this blunt with you, but nothing else has worked. You have to understand." "I do understand. You lied to me, and the only mother I ever knew betrayed me. I have no one who really cares about me, and I never have." "That is not true. I care. I love you. Why can't you see that? I lied to you to protect you. As a small child, it would have been very confusing if you'd known the truth about your mother." "Whatever. Just let me go. I don't want to be around you anymore. I'm done with you." "Honey, why won't you listen to reason? You're old enough to know better. You can't take this rage out on me, and you certainly can't take it out on Angela. She has always been your best friend." "Don't you tell me who is my friend. She knows how I feel about women you date. It's a slap in the face that you never cared about my mother. That's why you cheated. She's your friend and she cares about you. She deserves to be happy. I deserve to be happy. And you deserve to be happy. But I can't bring happiness into your life for you. You're a grown woman and you have to figure it out for yourself," Richard said as he let go. Angela peered around the corner, and even from there, she could see the daggers in Naomi's eyes. "Then I am dead to you. I hope you two are happy. She lost her best friend and you lost your only daughter." With that, Naomi ran off down the hallway. "Naomi," Richard called after her, his voice echoing down the hall. Angela debated for a few seconds whether to walk away and pretend that she had never heard this heated exchange, or comfort the man she loved who was now clearly a broken shell of himself. As Richard stooped down to the floor and leaned against the wall with his head in his hands, he began to cry. It broke Angela to see that big, strapping man whom she loved so much in so much pain. She took a deep breath and tried to wipe away her own tears as she rounded the corner and walked to him. She kneeled down beside him, and he laid his head on her shoulder, trying to hold back her own tears. She wanted to tell him it was okay, and he needed to just let it all out, but she didn't dare. He would do what he needed to do right then. She just wanted to be there for him. "I've really lost her," Richard said. "She'll be back." "I know it," Angela replied. She didn't know how, but she was going to help Naomi. Chapter 11. Angela pulled up in front of Naomi's apartment building about an hour after she finished the catwalk show. After the craziness that Naomi had caused, Angela had pulled herself together just enough to go back out there and knock them dead. Luckily, she didn't break any teeth or smash her lips as badly as it felt. Her makeup artist was able to apply a slightly darker shade of lipstick that covered the slight bit of swelling she had just fine, and it was all good. Richard had pulled himself back together after only 5 minutes of time with her. She was glad that she had been able to be there for him and allow him to be vulnerable enough to lean on her for a few minutes. She was shocked that he didn't take more time than he did, but he said she had a show to do, and she could tell that he quickly sucked it up and turned the tables around to be the support guy for her. And she needed it. The rest of the show went by smoothly, and everyone was amazed at how well she did for her first time. She heard that there was talk in the works of her being added to the gala, which was one of the biggest fashion shows in New York City, that would be televised on the Style Channel around Christmas. That was the big time. Beyond that, she might even be up for some Victoria's Secret things. That terrified Angela to her very core, because that wasn't wearing sweet outfits, that was mostly lingerie and other skimpy items. She wasn't sure she was nearly hot enough for that, but every time she heard that voice of doubt entering her brain, she was learning to quickly tell it to shut the hell up. And she was getting good at this. Angela walked into the building, and Tony the doorman recognized her. Luckily, Naomi had not had the presence of mind to tell him not to let Angela up. But as she approached the elevator, Tony stopped her. Maybe he was told not to let her up after all. "What's going on?" Angela asked. "I just saw Miss Kane leave about 20 minutes ago." "Did she say where she was going?" Angela asked. "No, but she had a small bag with her," Tony replied. "What kind of bag?" "It was a pink duffel bag," Tony said. Angela thanked him and walked back out to her car. She was starting to wonder if she should have brought Richard in on this, but he probably didn't belong on this particular mission. This was a big showdown between her and Naomi. She had to speak to her woman to woman, without any referees or outside interference. That was the way it had to be. She was not sure Richard would have understood that. Angela sat down in her Corvette and pulled out her phone. The Corvette had been a bit of an impulse buy, but she didn't know how she had survived without one. She had picked it up on advice from Richard. He told her that now she was starting to get a bit of a taste of the success that was due to come her way, and she needed to just spoil herself a bit by buying something ridiculous. Angela had always been kind of cautious, especially with money, but Richard was persuasive as hell, and she started to feel he was right. Ever since she was a little girl, she had dreamed of owning a shiny red Corvette. It was not the most luxurious sports car or the most expensive and prestigious, but it was damn sexy, she thought, and she felt like $1,000,000 when she was behind the wheel. She found Naomi's number in her contacts and took a deep breath before pressing call. She knew that Naomi would either answer and tell her to go straight to hell or ignore her, and Angela would not know where she was still. There was something off about Naomi tonight. From her perch looking around the corner in the corridor at the show, Angela had seen a woman desperate for someone to help her, but scared to death to ask for it. She was a woman on the brink of doing something crazy. And that terrified Angela. What was Naomi capable of in her current state, and what the hell was she doing with that bag that Tony mentioned? It sounded so familiar. Where had she seen Naomi with a bag like that? It was eating at her brain because she knew the answer somewhere. She just didn't know how she knew. After 5 rings, Angela hung up the phone. She pressed 69 and tried again, hoping that this would work if Naomi was screening her calls and not just not talking to anyone. After 5 rings, it went to voicemail. Naomi wasn't taking any calls tonight, apparently. Angela dialed Natalie, who picked up on the third ring. "Nat, can you do me a favor and call Naomi? I'm worried about her, and she isn't answering my calls." "Sure. No sweat," Natalie said. Angela waited 3 minutes until she heard her phone ringing back. It was Natalie. "Yeah, did you get through?" "No, just voicemail." "You think she's okay? Or is she just having one of those weird moods?" Natalie asked. "I'm not sure, but thanks for trying." "We've got to hang out soon," Angela said. She suddenly realized it had been almost a month since she had seen her friend. "Yeah, for sure. Call me later. Let me know if you find out anything about Naomi," Natalie said. "Will do," Angela replied before disconnecting the call. Angela thought a moment. The only thing that might have a clue about what Naomi was thinking or feeling or doing would be social media. Angela pulled up her apps for Facebook and Twitter and went to Naomi's profile. Her latest post was actually only 12 minutes ago. "Falling abyss, can't make it to the shore. Why would I want to? See you all in the underbelly of Moby.
Censored.
Peace." Angela read the post several times. It was an excerpt of a poem by someone she didn't recognize. What the hell did it mean? What was she trying to say? After thinking it over for a few minutes, she finally realized that pink bag kept popping into her head and the words abyss and shore. She knew where Naomi was. When they were kids, they would often go down by the coastline of Coney Island Creek. It was a private little getaway that their parents would often take them to. It was a little further down than the normal public beaches, and they would feel special, as if they had their own private beaches there. But the tides at night could get rough, especially if you were not a good swimmer. Every year, several people lost their lives there trying to go swimming at night. It was getting a bit late in the year to really do that, but it was possible that that was where Naomi was headed. Was she really going to do herself in? Was she at the end of her rope for real? Angela could not allow herself to believe that her best friend would do such a thing. But she would not have been a friend if she ignored her gut reaction to the situation. She only hoped that she was not too late. Angela felt she had to tell Richard. He had to know what his daughter was planning, but what good would it do? He would be too late. It would take him at least twice as long as her to get there. If she couldn't save Naomi, then no one could. She thought about calling the police, but she was not sure that they would even be in on coast patrol this late at night, and if they did, they didn't really patrol that section of water. It was not considered a real beach. Actually, Angela believed it might have even been private property. It certainly was not a public beach. As she began dialing for the police, she started to fear that the sounds of sirens or the sight of bright flashing lights might send Naomi over the edge. There would have been no talking sense into her. Angela had to do this herself. She just hoped that her old friend would listen to her. How had this happened? How had Naomi, who had the strongest personality she had ever come across, become so disillusioned that she was seriously considering killing herself? Angela just could not make sense of how everything had taken such a serious turn. She had to get there fast. Ignoring every safety and every traffic law that she knew, she floored the pedal. It was a Tuesday night, so the traffic was rather light as she got closer and closer to the island. She would be there in 10 minutes. She just hoped that the part of the island close to Kingsman College where they had always gone was where Naomi was going. If she pulled a fast one and decided to go to an undisclosed spot, then Angela would never find her in time. She just had to keep her hopes up. It was possible that the Facebook message was some sort of a sign to her friends to come and find her. It was so vague that most people wouldn't understand it. That meant that Naomi wanted to be found. She didn't want to suffer through this anymore, and she didn't really want to end it all. She wanted someone to show her that they cared enough to save her. Angela knew that. But that didn't mean that Naomi wouldn't go through with it. If no one showed up in time, she would take that to mean that no one really cared enough to figure this out, and that they didn't care enough to talk her out of any of this. She had to prove Naomi wrong. She did care, and if she could get there in time, she just might be able to save her friend's life. She was almost there. She wondered how long Naomi had actually been there on the shore, watching the dark waves crashing, and wondering how soon it would be before she would put her bathing suit on and walk into the water and let the waves take her away. That was what was in the pink bag. Angela could remember it clearly now. She had seen Naomi carrying it the last time that she went to this secluded beach to go swimming. If she was going to kill herself, she would not dare jump in the water with her nice clothes on. Even in death, Naomi was still pretty vain, and she would want to be properly attired if and when her body was dragged from the waters. That was just the type of girl that Naomi was. It was almost funny to think about the stupid little things that Naomi would be concerned with when she was about to make this kind of stupid decision. Angela pulled up in front of the beach. She was only about a mile jog from that corner that was well hidden from the main beach by some jagged rocks. She was going to have to climb over those in the dark, which she was not at all looking forward to. Maybe she could yell for Naomi to come to her senses from there, and put an end to the whole thing that way. She didn't think that was going to be an option though, so she didn't bank on it. The air was cooler than it had been back in the city. The ocean breeze was strong here, almost as if it wanted to suck her out to sea. It was beautiful and peaceful. She used to love coming to these waters during the summers when she was a kid. It was a great place to come, day or night. Rarely could she convince her parents to come later in the day so she could enjoy the beach at night, but as she got older and closer to adulthood, she started to do this by herself, but she made sure to stay away from the private beach. Angela didn't quite have the balls to go into that area alone at night. Anything could have happened to her. The rocks were bigger than she remembered, and they were wet. Angela sighed as she took a deep breath, and slowly began to climb over the front of the rock formation that seemed to create a natural barrier between the two beaches. As her feet slid and skated across the wet rocks under the cover of darkness, she tried to tell herself how important it was for her to complete this mission and reach the other side. Naomi's life depended on it. She had to get there in time. The constant reminder propelled her to move quicker, but she forcibly slowed herself down enough to maintain the safety that was needed. If she fell and was hurt, then it would not do Naomi or her any good at all. She took steady deep breaths as she reached with her hands and then followed with her feet. She was almost around the rocks, and in a second she would be landing safely on the other side. She took the last step almost too quickly, and felt her whole body joker as her feet slipped out from under her, but luckily her arms came into action and she held on tightly. The sea was roaring beneath her with the loud thrashing waves calling her name. They wanted her. They wanted to suck her whole body and soul up in one swift movement, but she would be damned before that happened. Angela maneuvered her body around the final rock, and planted both feet on the sandy beach that they had always dubbed the hideout when they were kids. They were not sure if it was part of the public beach, or if it had been condemned for some reason. Rumor had it that the rocks formed a perfect pool with the cliff on the other side of the beach, and that the tide flooded over there every single morning. Angela and pals had never ventured to test this theory. There she was. Naomi was midway on the beach, close to the edge of the shore. She was just staring blindly out to the sea. Angela could see her figure outlined by a light that was suddenly off in the distance. She could not tell if it was a lighthouse or just someone's home, but it was giving her enough light to see the perfect silhouette of her friend. She walked slowly closer to Naomi, not wanting to startle her until she was closer. Perhaps if Naomi saw it was her, she would think twice about doing this. When she was about 10 feet from her friend, she called out to her. Naomi's head shot around like she had just heard a cannonball firing at her head. She looked frightened and she looked angry, but most of all she looked hurt and scared. Angela wanted nothing more right then than to help her friend. "What do you want?" Naomi asked. "I want to help," Angela replied. "Yeah, sure. That's all you want. You want to help me. Well then maybe you should stop messing with my life. How about that? You know that's not the way it is. Naomi, come on. You're a smart, reasonable person. I know you're hurting. You don't know anything about me, Naomi shouted. Angela had never heard such ferocity in her voice before. I do know. I know you. I knew where to find you. Lucky guess, Naomi said. No. I knew because I know you. I know my best friend. I know when you are hurt. I know when you are scared. And I know when you are reaching out for help. Naomi smirked and continued to stare out into the ocean. You don't want to do this, Angela said. Don't tell me what I want. I want you to go back where you came from. I don't need you here. Yes, you do. You need me. And you need your dad. A tear began to drop down Naomi's eye just then. It was the first real emotion that Angela had seen on her face in a while. It was a good sign of hope. Just leave me alone, Naomi said as the tears began to fall harder. It was finally starting to get to her. That's it, let it out. Let go of all that hatred. You know it's wrong. Angela was almost standing right beside her now, and she could see the tears rolling down Naomi's face as her chin quivered uncontrollably. She was letting go. Naomi was starting to show some real emotion, and it was a beautiful sight. It's okay, Angela said. She reached out quickly and grabbed her friend in her arms, pulling her close. Now the floodgates were opening up, and Naomi began to cry harder and harder, her sobs loud and ringing in Angela's ear. She didn't dare try to stop it, she had to let it happen. The pain had to leave Naomi, and this was the best way for it to do that. I'm so sorry, Naomi said. I just hurt so bad. I know. It's okay. Why didn't she want me? Why did she do this to me? Naomi cried, full-blown bawling now. Angela stroked the back of her friend's head as she buried her head in her shoulder. She could not help the tears from falling down her own cheeks too. She had missed her sweet friend so much. All they had been through over the years, it could not end that way. Angela knew that the real Naomi was tucked away somewhere, and she was determined to bust her loose. I'm sorry about what I did to you, Naomi said. I'm just so afraid of losing my dad. He's all I really have in this world. I know, honey. It's okay. He loves you. He understands how you feel, Angela said. After all I've done, I'm not sure he will ever forgive me. I've put him through hell. And he didn't deserve it. I'm a horrible person. I'm just so ashamed. You'd be surprised, sweetie. He loves you more than you could possibly know. And he loves you no matter what. You could never do anything to change that. Well, I guess I have some work to do. I have to find him, Naomi said. You may not have to, Angela remarked as she stepped away and looked back. Naomi and she could both clearly see Richard standing there smiling at the two of them. Somehow Angela knew that he would be there, and that he would figure out the same thing that she did. It just took him a bit longer to get there from where he was. He was standing in front of the rocks with a huge grin on his face. Naomi rushed over to her father and almost knocked him over as he received the kind of warm embrace from his daughter that he had begun to fear he may never feel again. Angela could see the emotion overwhelming them both, and kept some distance as she basked in her own feelings of joy, watching the long-overdue reconciliation between two of the closest people in her life. Wow, I can't believe how you got through to her, Richard said. Naomi was waiting in her father's car, still wiping away the tears, as he walked Angela to her car parked about 100 feet down the beach from his. Yeah, I just spoke from the heart. I guess that was what she needed to hear, Angela said. Angela, you are absolutely the most incredible woman that God ever put breath into. Angela felt herself blushing as she tried to shake off the exquisite compliment. I thought I was sure before, but after seeing the way you just saved my daughter, I am beyond certain now. I want you to be my wife, Richard said. What? Angela gasped. Before she could utter a single thought or ask him what he was thinking, Richard was down on one knee pulling a small box out of his pocket. He opened it up, revealing the most beautiful diamond ring that she had ever seen. Angela Walters, will you marry me? Yes, Angela choked out with tears rolling down her face. Of course I'll marry you. Chapter 12. 6 months later. Richard stepped out of the bathroom. His nude, muscular body was like a fine piece of art that had been chiseled out of marble. Every muscle, every sinew was tight and rippling with tiny beads of perspiration. He stood there staring like a hunter stalking his prey. But the prey had already given up. It was terrified and waiting for whatever the hunter wanted to do to it. There was no chance for escape. But this prey did not want to escape. Angela licked her lips and readied herself as Richard walked slowly towards her. His body glistened under the dim lights, in the honeymoon suite of the luxury resort that Richard had picked as the first stop on their honeymoon in Cabo San Lucas. It had all been so perfect. Their amazing, blissful wedding had just wrapped up about 5 hours ago. Their families and friends had all been there, as well as a ton of press and paparazzi, all aching to get the first photograph of the newly married power couple that was about to take Hollywood by storm. Everything had been exactly the way she imagined it. They had an underwater theme that was supposed to be an enchantment in the lost city of Atlantis, which they had both always been intrigued by. A lifelike replica of the Titanic had been built for them as well. It was not a real boat, but it looked better than the one in the movie in Angela's opinion. And Naomi was her maid of honor. She looked amazing, as did Natalie, Rachel, and her cousin Shelby, who rounded out her stable of bridesmaids. It was difficult to think that it had actually been 6 months since Naomi had almost killed herself. But since then, everything had been wonderful. Richard's relationship had never been stronger between him and his daughter, and it melted Angela's heart to see how happy they were. And Naomi was thrilled beyond belief about the wedding, more and more as the big day approached. It was going to be weird to be her lifelong best friend's stepmother, but Angela had a feeling they would move past it soon enough. And now it was time. It was time for Angela to experience the night she had been waiting for all of her life. She was nervous, anxious, and scared, but excited. All those feelings were rolled into one. It felt like she was having a coronary every 5 minutes and was waiting for the big one, but she combated those with an artillery of heavy breathing.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
They held each other tenderly, and Angela could hardly believe that it had happened. Everything in her life had finally come together perfectly for her. Her first experience of physical love was even more intense than she had ever imagined it would be, but she imagined a lot of that was due to the fact that she loved Richard Kane with her whole mind, body, and soul. "I love you, sweetie," Richard said, echoing her own thoughts to her. "Oh, I love you more, babe," Angela replied. Richard curled her closer to his.
Censored.
Her head resting there, hearing his heart beating rhythmically beneath. She loved to listen to his body. She loved to listen to the life force deep inside of him. It sounded like love and hope, which she had been seriously lacking in her life. But not anymore. She was quickly becoming one of the rising stars of the fashion industry, and she was now married to the most amazing man she could have ever asked for. Sometimes, though, she started feeling like she didn't deserve it all. At times, she would find herself waking up in the middle of the night, sure that it was all a dream, or that it was all temporary. Maybe it would all disappear soon, and that would be the end of her roller coaster ride. She saw it happen all the time. The fashion world and the entertainment world were both fickle beasts, and they were all about the flavor of the week. Who was to say that she wasn't just this week's flavor? Richard Kane, that is who. When those seeds of doubt started to plant themselves into her paranoid brain, Angela Walters Kane just had to think about her amazing husband Richard, and she could cast those thoughts aside and go on enjoying their perfect fairy tale life together. Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my author friend's book. Get Dark Desire now. A big favor to ask. I would really love it if you could take a few seconds to leave me a review. Thank you so much in advance. About the author. Selena Coffey is a romance writer who lives happily in London with her husband and son. She is a hopeless romantic who grew up always believing in love, and she is not ashamed to admit this. It is this belief that makes her so passionate about writing crazy love stories. A stereotypical girly girl, she loves shopping. So whenever she gets a chance and the spare cash, you will probably find her browsing online for the next pair of shoes to add to her collection. You can find her online at www.selenacoffee.com. Contact her at hello@selenacoffee.com. Closing credits. This has been Don't Tell Daddy. Written by Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.